My mixer's up. There we go. Welcome back to another Dev Intersection. My name is Jeff Fritz, and my co-host over here is...
Richard Campbell.
It's Richard Campbell. You look like you're landing a plane, dude.
Yeah. This is my steampunk aviator outfit. And, one of the things people may or may not know about me is I have a really large head. Most hat sizes go up to maybe like 7 5/8 or 7 3/4. I have an 8 3/4 head.
Oh my gosh.
So this thing, my wife, who's in the clothing industry, made this. This is the first cap I've ever owned that actually fit. So it changed my life. When she first made it, which is like last Halloween, I wore it a whole day because I'm not used to having things sit on my head that actually are comfortable.
This is so tight on my head. Like, this is a large, and it's like squeezing my head. I'm like,
oh, man. But yeah, I have custom made motorcycle helmets. Like, it's the only way to get one that goes on.
Okay.
Not that I ride anymore because I'm old, but
as happens to all of us.
Yes.
So,
the children are grown now, so I'm a little less stressy about it. I'm just not that interested. If you ride motorcycles in your 20s, when you get to your 40s and 50s, you're like, I do not have the reflexes for this anymore.
And Boom Boom in the chat room says you look like you're from The Mummy. Janescu says Pilot Richard.
Same kind of category, but it's a great outfit. I have a long oiler coat and stuff with it as well, but not while I'm sitting at a computer.
No. And I've just got to change your Skype feed 1 second. There it goes.
Low?
No, so because we've had a couple different folks join us over the last few weeks, we've had to flip-flop and change settings here. So I actually had it set to active speaker. So whoever was joining me, I didn't have to go and configure anything. There they are. Yeah. So we do have some guests joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and it's Halloween too, so this should all be slightly silly.
Oh, slightly?
Yeah,
slightly?
Some slight silliness, I think.
We can get really silly right off the bat here because, so I have our extra configuration here set up so that it's, our extra configuration where we have our guest set up so that it's bringing in the active speaker, whoever it is. Well, right now, you're the active speaker. I'm actually going to need to change that so it's somebody else, because right now it looks like
look, I'm everywhere.
That's not right. That's not right.
A little spooky.
So
I keep trying to look at myself, but I don't think it works.
Yeah, I did that once with some photos, and I put myself on two sides of the picture around my wife, and she's like, "That's just weird. That's just creepy." I'm like, "Come on."
You're just freaking people out. What are you doing?
I tell you, what am I going to do with this? So much has happened since we last got together.
Well, yeah, you've done a bunch of shows without me, but I went on this like 5-week tour of conferences and things. I went to Scotland and then to the Netherlands for Techorama.
Okay.
And then I came home for a day.
Just a day.
Then flew down to New Zealand, visit the family down there, the dairy farm, and then over to Australia for NDC Sydney.
Oh my gosh!
And then flew back from there. Was home for a day, almost literally exactly 24 hours, and then flew to Poland for Developer Days Poland.
Wow. Okay, so you did 3 continents.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm an expert, flyer. Like I do a couple 100,000 miles a year, and I am very tolerant of jet lag. My argument's been I've been jet lagged since 2001, so it doesn't really make a difference to me. But 48 hours from Sydney to Warsaw kicked my butt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I am still recovering from that. Like that was a surprise. I got all my talks done.
Fantastic.
We made a few .NET Rocks episodes in Poland. Like we did all the work, but I didn't go out any nights. I literally yeah.
Oh my goodness.
5 weeks is too many, too long.
So
there's a line.
What I've run into is, what I'm staring at here is I've got 3 weeks straight because we've got Ignite next week, and I'll see you there.
Yep.
I come home, I go to Tech Bash in the Pennsylvania Poconos.
Oh yeah, right. That's the the Kalahari, right?
Yeah, at the Kalahari out there, and I'm giving a keynote. I have a couple sessions on Visual Studio, on ASP.NET Core.
Mm-hmm.
Come home, turn around, pack up, load all the gear into the bags, and head to Vegas for DEVintersection.
And we finally, well, actually, I should be there for a couple of weeks now, but we finally have the whole schedule done.
Yeah.
For intersection. There's just been a lot of moving parts. There's so much to talk about. It's been a challenge, and I think we still have some embargoed sessions.
There are.
Yeah, there's still secrets being kept right up to the last minute, it seems, this year.
I pulled a couple strings and said, "Hey, there's something secret coming up here. Can we talk about it at DEVintersection?" And they said, "We're gonna need to. We can't tell people what it is just yet."
Yeah. So if you go onto the site, the whole schedule's there, but there are a few sessions just marked, team secret.
Yeah. Right, and that's the advantage of coming to an event like DEVintersection. I mean, you'll get embargoed sessions at a Microsoft Ignite, at a Microsoft Build,
sure.
But the developer content focused like that's really targeted to what developers want to know. That's the advantage of DEVintersection.
Yeah, we get and plus you can have some conversations with the folks, with the people that are actually building the product, that are going to be up there to show it, and then are around for the rest of the day. So if you want to sit and talk about what these new technologies really mean, the consequences of them, you can do that. It's part of the fun, I think.
Oh my gosh!
Probably Ignite is a riot, but Ignite is 25,000 of your closest friends.
You're not going to get FaceTime with anybody.
Yeah, you can't get anywhere near the stage. If you actually have some questions, you go to the Microsoft sort of lab area in the middle of the floor. That's where you get your questions answered.
Yeah.
Getting to anywhere near speakers is basically impossible. But at DEVint, no, you can come and talk to the speakers. It's easy to do. And
the fact that, I mean, the first time I went to DEVintersection and I finished giving my sessions, I'm walking out, leaving the conference center, and I'm walking by the burger bar, the grill, the bar that has burgers and great cider. My gosh, I keep going back to that same one. And I walk in, and there's Scott Hunter and Damian Edwards sitting down, and I got a chance to, hey, can I talk to you guys about .NET, this, that, and the other? Sure, come on over, and just, right, it's the speakers are very accessible. Yeah, and I mean, it's not like the spring show in Orlando where we literally take over the Swan. Yeah.
This is the MGM Grand, and it has something like 7,000 rooms. And while there's lots of folks coming to the fall show, we don't have the whole place. But all of the bars and restaurants and things in that complex, they're full of attendees.
Yeah.
I guarantee you the 3/4 of the Starbucks line, all folks going to DEVint.
Yep. And there's a question from Nothing Else Matters. Are there any live streams coming up from Ignite? Well, Ignite has their own Ignite Live broadcast that they'll be doing, and they'll be syndicating some of that content to the Visual Studio channel, and that's a Microsoft thing. Mm-hmm. But we'll be running live streams from DEVintersection here on this channel.
Yeah, well, in fact, we're working on that schedule right now to put together. I think I'm going to host a block. You're going to host a block.
Yep.
My cohort, Carl Franklin's agreed to host a block. We're going to work on a couple other hosts and sort of grab the speakers and get a chance to talk through their sessions and what they did and what they liked. I really like, and I often do this with .NET Rocks episodes too. When you get a speaker right off the stage, when they finished answering questions and so forth, they still got that high of having finished their talk, and they're thinking about their talk still, like what worked, what didn't. That's a great time to interview them.
Oh my gosh.
Never more engaged with their own talk than right after they finished it. And you can really dig into things.
So those of you that are out there on Twitch, you can, of course, click the links below. If you still want to get out, you want to attend the show, absolutely. Click through, buy tickets. There's still rooms available at the hotel. You want to come out. But if you can't make it, maybe it's a little bit too far to travel, we'll have some of the folks right here.
Yeah, you'll see some of the content at least. There's also the Golden Knights are in town that week.
Oh.
On Tuesday and Thursday. So.
Oh. And I don't leave until Friday morning.
Just saying. I hate to say, I'm not sad about this because I am Canadian, so I'm supposed to like hockey. But that's some of the best pro sports experiences. Like, I think it's the best show in Vegas now.
Yeah.
Search is fine, but the Golden Knights put on one heck of a show.
Oh my gosh! Going there last time was just amazing.
Yeah, no, it went really well, and it was a fun part of the overall experience. We've got evening events and so forth at the conference. the SQL Insiders thing is going to be happening, the Security Insiders as well. But it is Vegas. There is a lot to take a look at.
Oh yeah,
and generally speaking, like software people are not big on gambling. I think it's because they're good at math.
Yeah,
but there's probably do Vegas than gamble.
Oh my gosh! Last time I was in Vegas, I finally got tickets and I went and saw the Cirque du Soleil show.
Yeah, that's right in the MGM.
Oh my gosh, tremendous! Being able to don't have to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. There's Wolfgang Puck is right there, so had nice seafood dinner. Wandered over, went in to see the show. Went back to a bar afterwards. Able to have a couple of adult drinks and unwind, and you're walking distance from your room.
From everything, yeah.
So
that place is a city, right? There's it's a city because there's 2 Starbucks.
2.
There is 2, yeah. The one on the corridor going to the convention center is usually the busy one, but there's another one around sort of the other way a bit. So if you don't want to wait in a long line, but you really need your latte, you can hit the other one.
Go the other way. So, for some reason, I just don't get into coffee when I'm in Vegas. Right? I don't know. Starbucks. When I'm in, I end up doing G Fuel. It becomes my thing there.
I've never drank coffee. I'm a tea drinker.
Ah, okay.
I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it's the hat.
It's the hat. Squeezing too much on our heads, dear Lord.
Is piracy really appropriate as a software developer? I mean, I do appreciate we're both wearing vests. I think you're wearing a vest. Or is that
I don't have the vest on. It's just the hair. My gosh, I had the vest on and it was like, it's really hot.
Yeah, no. We'll see how long I last wearing this vest, but the jacket on.
Yeah, I was like, no, we'll just do the shirt. So
what talks have you got scheduled? I know I scheduled them, but tell me again.
What do we have? I'm sorry?
What talks are you going to be doing at the show?
Oh my gosh. So at the show, something that folks who've been watching my stream, you've seen me talk about and tiptoe around this issue a lot. I'm going to be talking about Blazor for the web forms developer. And we briefly touched on this on a .NET Rocks while I was at the beginning of building the content. And I kind of had my outline of what this is. But this is something that web forms developers are kind of scared of, and they're like, well, where do I go? Where do I take my skills? Mm-hmm. So to take an hour and break it down, and here's how components work in the new model. Here's how you build your forms in the new model, and you get cross-platform capability. If you built your web forms app correctly is the wrong word. If you built it modularly, you're going to be able to refactor and reuse some of your code. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and this makes a lot of sense because, I mean, you were talking about server-side Blazor here. So very much the model is the same as web forms, right?
It is.
And render on the server, trips back as necessary, and not a lot of sophisticated JavaScript coding that runs on the client.
No.
It's a very different philosophy, I think, from other page methods that people are using. We got plenty of Angular, Vue, and React sessions going on. So if you like the client-side render, knock yourself out. But I feel like the server-side Blazor has brought back the server-side component model in a lot of ways, especially when you talk about on-prem apps, stuff that people still run as web forms. This is hugely compelling. It's just like, hey, this is a pattern it performs very much the same way. I'd be interested in metricing the overhead just to say, is this more efficient, less efficient? But certainly it's modernized and it's cross-plat, and you're going to know what you're doing.
For sure. There were a couple things that aren't quite figured out, and we've stumbled into, particularly on stream as I'm building. I'm doing the, hey, let me build Twitch widgets type thing. Folks know what those are, but using Blazor and learning Blazor, but using that project as a vehicle to learn the framework, what we're running into is, you know what? It's one thing to build server-side components in the same project, but if you can take those components out and put them inside of a Razor class library, now if I want to shift some of those to be client-side, it's the exact same code.
Right. Yeah. So if and when whatever comes up with the client, like we still really don't know what client's going to look like long term, but we are headed towards, one of the things I liked about us coding in C# is that the idea it would run anywhere, right? That we'd have all those options.
Oh yeah. And there's talk about, right, let's run Blazor on WebAssembly inside of an Electron app.
Yeah, that's a possibility, right? And you're really hitting on a big thing, Jeff, which is that we're still experimenting, or not me, because I'm just a storyteller, right? But there's still lots of experimentation going on with what exactly does WebAssembly mean? Like, what are the patterns that make sense? And it's nice to see there's a bunch of different companies, not just Microsoft, but you're seeing Google do some experiments in this area, with both Go and Dart and so forth. Like, they're all feeling around. What does this mean? What if we could introduce other languages to the browser and just run in that context?
Absolutely.
I'm fascinated. I don't know what the answer is. It doesn't seem clear. All we know is that this idea that I have a language I'm comfortable in, I have code I've already written, I just want to run it in different contexts. This seems like a new pattern for us as developers, right? That we mature sets of code and then choose their execution platforms.
But I feel like isn't that something we tried to do with Java back in the day, and .NET had that promise of, but .NET, of course, it runs on every platform. Hello.
Yes, the wife magically appeared. She's not. This is the one that made my hat, right?
There you go.
She's got her own steampunk outfit as well.
There you go. But right, that was some of the promise of those, right, just-in-time compiled platforms, but we never really got there.
Yeah, no, that was the joke with Java, right? Is that what compiler were you running? Like, it was sort of in theory I can run this everywhere. More, I have to debug it everywhere because the different stacks behave differently.
Yes.
And there were challenges with Java. C#. Certainly, my effort at working on the book has reminded me once again that C# benefited from coming after Java in the sense, especially when you talk about things like type systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when they were designing C# was the middle of the battle over Java trying to find a way to generics, right?
Yeah.
And they get these wild card approaches. Like, they did a lot of different things there, and the folks designing C#, and it's not just Anders. This is also Don Syme. We know Don Syme is the father of F#, but I've read his papers from the late '90s now, where he was talking about how important this generic type system was going to be, and that it needed to be built in. The very first versions of .NET, they had generics in mind. They wouldn't surface until 2, and then ultimately 3.5 with Link when we really get them. But they were always there. And that was the direct beneficiary of the battle that Java had over types as things evolved, as you wanted to run on more platforms.
Okay. Right, and now we're in the world where we really do want our user interface to be portable.
Yeah, well, I also think more validation code. I mean, certainly we want our user interface to deal with different form factors. But when you talk about that, like, you look at what Xamarin does, and you're thinking, okay, I got about 80% of the code that's common, and the 20 is different. How do I make that 20 smaller? All right, and how do I make it more modular and so forth? I feel like we're pressing against those bits now.
Yeah.
That I'm also looking at some of the other languages. Like, you spend some time with Flutter.
Okay, I hear a lot of folks talk about Flutter is an interesting. It's an interesting environment to program with. It's an interesting language. It's Dart, right?
Well, language-wise, but talking about Flutter as Dart is like talking about Ruby on Rails as Ruby.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Ruby was not a new language when Ruby on Rails came along.
Certainly.
It was Rails that was the magic.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It happened to express it in Ruby. But the metaphor of how they built web pages was the big deal, right? The fact that it happens to be Dart is almost secondary to the point. Don't get hung on the language. Look at the environment. The way they think about rendering and how they approach different mobile devices is really interesting. And by that token, a pain in the butt, because it's not the way you're thinking right now. So he's like, you have to learn a new metaphor, and that's always a struggle, right? Yeah. Because if you try and take the square peg that's in your head of the way you currently build stuff for mobile and cram it into the round hole of Flutter, you're going to be unhappy. This is just another hard thing, right? You've got to learn their metaphors.
Oh, I don't want to do that. But right, it's interesting that we're finding languages that have killer frameworks that go with them.
Well, what you're really seeing is we are thinking about how to build mobile properly, recognizing that the real problem of mobile, more than anything, is that you are coding on a different device than you're executing on, which we've just never been good at, ever.
Sure.
Right? You talk about generally successful development platforms, you were writing the code on the same machine that it was going to run on.
Well,
as soon as you need to just change that, we struggle.
And video game designers certainly run into this problem significantly.
All the time. And to the point where, like, follow the path of PS2 to PS3 to PS4, right? PS3 and the Xbox went to custom ASIC hardware to maximize performance and made it impossible to build games efficiently. Just the cost of games went through the roof. So when they built their new hardware in the form of the PS4 and the Xbox One, what did they do? They went back to PC reference hardware.
Okay.
And that's why, because now you could write the game, run it on the. Now the downside of that is making unique games, like games that only run on a distinct platform, really means legal constructs.
Yeah.
Not constructs.
Right.
They're all C hardware again, more or less. So you write it for one of those platforms, you've really written it for all of them. But isn't that what we want, right? Like I know our user only cares about it running on their device.
Sure.
Right. Sure. We just want it to run on all the devices. We don't want to code it on all the devices because it's too expensive and it's painful. And with the reason the mobile market is fragmented the way it is there's no good answers. They're all hard. Right? When the market consolidates around an approach, it's because that was really a great way to solve it. It's clearly superior.
So, and we're keeping an eye on you there in the chat room. Let us know if you have some comments or some questions here about around mobile and some of the design things that Richard and I are talking about. But now when we're talking about consolidating around different devices, different things, different technologies, I look at the new Surface phone that Microsoft is talking about for next year.
And didn't they say it wasn't a phone?
It's not a phone, but it makes phone calls.
Yeah, except for the first thing they showed was making a phone call, but it's not a phone. Yeah, okay. What are they calling it? Duo?
It was one was Duo and one was Nano, right, or something like that.
Something like that. I mean, it's interesting to make an announcement a year in advance. I'm gonna presume that just was to make Samsung angry. But
perhaps
everybody's trying to build a folding display.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Although it looks like the Duo isn't bothering. It's just going like, look, 2 displays, which I've always been a multi-display guy. I don't have a problem with. I do like organizing work into different categories on the screens.
Oh yeah.
So, now, I'm super interested in that. I'm just interested to see how we're going to code against it.
But the Surface team gave in and didn't fight the fight that Samsung is, right, where Samsung has a hinge that's part of the screen.
Yeah.
The Surface team said, well, we're going to make a really cool looking hinge that kind of folds away, but it's still there. There's still there's a bezel between the 2 screens. So
these are philosophical differences. Do you really want the display to be contiguous? I mean, I guess if you're looking at a video, you care about it being contiguous.
Sure.
But half the time when I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm looking at the comments at the same time anyway. So the fact that I could turn 2 screens sideways, have the video running in the upper one, and look at the other stuff in the lower one is even more useful to me anyway.
Or you might have one screen is your video and the lower screen is your Twitch chat. Huh? See what I did there?
Yeah. No, I'm picking up what you're putting down, right? Did you see that Asus has got a laptop where part of the keyboard area is also a screen?
Yes.
So I mean, we're all there's a bunch of experimentation with these different screen metaphors.
It's okay. Touch typing on a screen, it's awful.
Well, no, because you need the little nubs. You need the motion, but the idea that there are draggable, droppable, manipulable touch items in a sort of horizontal plane that represents a different part of the UI from the vertical plane of the screen, I get that.
Makes total sense.
Makes sense to me.
Right? I mean,
have I seen a great implementation? No. but we're seeing it with there, but it's possible.
We had all the widgets and gadgets back in the Windows Vista time frame, right? With things like there was Confabulator. Remember that? And there was Vista gadgets that you could pin to the side of the screen that had the clock and whatever other things that you wanted to show. I see that as a return here where, this little portable dashboard on those little screen areas, I want to be able to see.
Do you remember that? I mean, when you think about the original Metro icons, right? They were almost
Yeah.
a little click me, click me, click me, like they were like 6-year-olds, right? But they often passed useful information on. Like Win Phone 8 did this well too, right? It's not just an icon; it's an icon with some info on it to let you prioritize
Yeah.
what you put on. Right? It's annoying as heck in your workspace,
Sure.
but could you put it in a secondary space where it might be useful? So that kind of lower band of screen tilted at a different angle, like these are all things that might make sense. They're metaphors for finding additional information as necessary.
Yeah. I am not myself in the chat room says, I'm skeptical. I want my phone to fit in my pocket, easily fit in my hand, but these folding phones seem silly. If I want to watch YouTube on a bigger screen, I'll use my Xbox.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not.
Well, I've got the 43-inch 4K sitting here behind me, which I always meant to put additional monitors on, and I just don't need to because 100 DPI 4K is lots of screen space.
Okay. So I was, yeah, there's a thing there. I was looking at getting a 34-inch high DPI screen to replace my 24-inch here. I'm like, that's 10 more inches of space, and I'm going to go to 4K display, and I'm like, this is really cool, but am I getting?
That's one of the ultra wides, right?
Yeah, it was going to be an ultra wide 21 by 7 layout, and I'm like, this looks really cool. But am I really getting that much more screen real estate at only 30 from 24 to 34? I'm looking at that and like,
not a lot. But there are in that form factor, there is a 38 as well.
Okay.
Right, which is just a bit bigger, like and less scaling. Right? For me, it's all about the scaling now. But the reason I grabbed that 43-inch 4K, and I admit I have been talking about this monitor ever since I got it, and it's been 3 years. It's because it's 4K that you don't scale. I'm at 100%.
Nice.
Right. And so you use all the pixels.
Yeah.
And it's actually large enough that it's like at times the corners are awfully far away. But that's a good problem to have. Like I'm really not sad about that.
Yeah.
It still excites me every single time I sit down on it. Like where I'm sitting right here, and maybe one day we'll do a tour of this, right? So there's a 34-inch curve display in front of me that's the machine I'm working from, and behind me is the 43-inch. And I've always had 2 workstations. And part of it is a perpetual A/B test, which makes me happier for what work.
Okay.
But I tell you that 4K, and this going back to the comment that was in the chat earlier, I absolutely stopped working on things where it's like this will be way less painful on my 43. I'm going to wait till I get home to do this. Right?
Wow. Okay.
And some videos where I've actually stopped watching it. I want to watch that on the big screen. Like, no, that's a good one, and I really want to watch that, and I want to suck up every pixel of it. So
yeah.
So move to the big screen for that.
What I run into is when I'm producing video like we are here, is I've now got the video that we're presenting. I'm in studio mode now because I'm setting things up on the preview screen here for when our first guest comes on, and I want to make sure that I load up and I position their video properly. So what is supposed to be full screen and that you folks out there see full screen and Richard sees full screen coming back to him is actually like a quarter of the screen for me. So for me to position things pixel wise is really hard.
Yeah. Well, and we've, offline, I've been with you while we've worked through adjusting all those pixels. It takes time.
Yeah. It is not trivial. So let me take a look at some of the comments from the chat room. Foreplay says, widgets are awesome. Our friend Carrie Payette is here. Hey, Carrie, good to see you. She's speaking at the event as well. She misses the Vista gadgets, and she'd kill the hinges on that phone in no time. Oh, my goodness. I Am Not Myself has the 34-inch ultra-wide, and it is amazing. See, now you're making me jealous here, buddy.
Well, it's addictive. But if I was going shopping right now, I'd have to buy the 38. I got this 34, one of the first ones that came out. It's the LG. And yeah, they're great. I got nothing bad to say about them. And the nice thing with that wide screen setup is it's good for side by side.
Yes.
To have a fully scaled document that you're reading and a fully scaled window of OneNote or Word or however you're making notes into it. You think about things that I do all of the time, like writing the tweets for the week for all the podcasts. So I've got the podcast editor open on one side, and I've got a scheduling tool like Twitter or Hootsuite or something like that beside it. and you need to be able to see between them. And that side by side works brilliant. You're not wrestling with anything. No clicking around one window under the other. Like they're both completely visible.
Absolutely. And right up. So I have two 27s that I have turned portrait next to my 24 so that I can put code on there, because seeing code in a vertical manner like that is
vertical's all that matters, right? And that's, I only count the pixels vertically. 2160, a lot of pixels.
Yes.
Unscaled 2160. Musical Bookworm was asking about with his 43. It's Dell's 43. It is actually a monitor, not a TV, priced accordingly. But the corners are good, the alignment is correct. It's a monitor. It also cuts up into 4 1080p screens, so there's actually 4 different inputs, and you can flip it into modes with different inputs. So you want to split up into 4 1080s. I used to do that. I often use picture-in-picture when I was running a separate machine for Skype for recording and things, although I keep playing with my recording configuration.
Now, when you do get to a bigger machine like that, you have to use 2 video inputs on the video card, right?
No. Yeah, this is HDMI 2 or DisplayPort 1.3, and I use the DisplayPort 1.3. It'll drive 4K, no problem.
Fantastic. Okay.
But when you do the multi 1080p, because it's got 4 inputs, and they're all different. Like I don't have 4 HDMI inputs. That would be way too easy. It's like a DP input, a couple HDMI inputs, and a VGA input.
Two Wolf Design in the chat room says they have the older 34-inch LG 34 ultra wide, using it in portrait mode for programs that they need, so they don't have to stack them.
Wow,
that's tall.
That's really tall. Like I'm gonna guess you got a custom arm for that just to get it high enough so you're not dragging on the ground.
Yeah. But I could definitely see. I mean, with the benefit of 27-inch and how I do that portrait, I can definitely see why you'd want to do that.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to put 2 34s side by side in portrait and just see how obnoxious that is. Well, and they're all curved too, right? I think at one point we had a conversation on the show about how many curved monitors you have to put together before it would go all the way around you.
Yeah,
it was a lot. Well, of course, some listener then did the math because I was being too lazy and figured out it was like 25 of them, and they're 16, 18 feet across. So you're not actually gonna be able to read them all. No. You're gonna need a good roller chair and the biggest chair mat known to man.
Well, you have a hardwood floor, you have a tile floor you can roll around on.
Yeah, and it's video and a lot of video cards, because that's a lot of video.
That's a lot of video.
Yeah.
Set up multiple machines so you're broadcasting across all of them.
Yeah, no, it's tempting, to put more screens in place. I live a lot on the laptop with all the travel, and I do carry I do carry a secondary display, that little Asus portable display that runs off USB only, and it's a 1080p screen.
So I've got a portable display now. It's a 15-inch high def display, and it runs off of USB-C.
Yeah. Oh, is that the new Asus one?
Well, this is actually it's branded Lapao.
Okay.
All right, whatever.
Whoever made that.
HDMI, USB-C, so I can plug it into my my Intel NUC. It's taking up two of the ports that I wasn't using, and now I've got a complete machine because I've got Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth mouse, and it takes up no space in my backpack because
that 15 inches weighs a pound and a half.
Yeah, it's nothing,
and it doesn't need a power brick.
Exactly.
All that stuff adds up.
Right. The power brick for the NUC is gigantic. It's almost bigger than the NUC.
Yeah, pretty much. You can kill a small animal with it. Depends on which NUC, though. There's different NUCs.
This is the Hades Canyon with the LED skull on it.
And it's got enough horsepower to run a live stream.
Several, yes. Oh, yes. It was tremendous for me. I tested it running it from Redmond. I ran it from a couple other locations, doing streams, doing recordings, and it was really, really good. Ran it from TwitchCon. We're all set to take that over to the MGM Grand and run everything off of there.
Yeah, that'll be the rig that all of us are going to work from then.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Set it up once, we'll get it right once, and then the different hosts can just learn it.
Exactly. It's got 6 USB 3A connectors on it, a couple of USB-Cs, it's got 2 HDMIs, 2 mini display ports, and I've got my birthday network rig with me that I'll be able to set up.
It's a lot of gear.
Yeah.
Well, who's up? Is it Robert first?
I can't remember if it's Robert or Michele first that's joining us. I need to take a look at our order here. So our friend SharePoint TV, they're one of our sibling productions that you can pick up on here. Yeah, they're going to pick one of these up. It's a fantastic price. I couldn't believe it. And I grabbed a NVMe drive and just snapped it in there. No problem. Pick up an extra terabyte for $70. Bing, done.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Cheap. Storage is very, very cheap.
Oh my gosh, yes. So it looks like Robert is second. I think Michele is first.
All right.
If I have this right. Right, between 10 to 11. So actually, we have him scheduled to come up here in about a half hour.
I thought it was 9:30 to 10:30 and then 10:30 to 11:30.
Okay. So, yeah, let's, I think it's Robert.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah. So, do you have him on Skype? I don't see him here.
Yeah, grab him. Grab his email off of that conversation. I should probably do it.
There he is. I think I have him. There we go. Alrighty, let's get him. Let's see if we can get him dialed in here. Now it didn't copy it properly out of here. Hang on. It still had my another value that I was working with here.
Yeah, let me send you his email info.
Copy email. If I come over here, there it is. There's Robert Green. See if we can get him waking up. There he is. I see him in Twitch. Hello. We're going to try and get you added in here on Skype. Fantastic. All right. There he is now. So I will close this, do the whole add a person thing. Where is it? I just had him. I hate how they do this. It's the add. No, I just had him on the screen. Come on now. This one.
Technology is your friend.
Oh my gosh. Let's see if we can
By
add
the way, to that 5-week journey, my Exchange server expired. Certificate expired.
Ow.
Yeah, because I still run Exchange server.
Yeah.
And because I hate myself. And of course the cert expired while I was
Hey, there's Mr. Robert.
Good morning.
Hey, man.
Morning.
How are you?
That is quite the outfit.
I need to stop you talking on the browser so I can not hear you double.
Yeah, don't do the lag talk.
Yep.
I actually have a mask that goes with this as well. There we go.
1 second, we'll get you loaded in here.
But then I figured you'd want to see my face.
But I took my goggles off for the same reason, right?
Hello there.
It's a bit too strange.
A little bit? A little bit strange?
Well, there's other goggles here too.
Oh my goodness.
Good to see you.
There we go. There's Robert Green. Yeah. Hello.
Hey.
Good.
Hello.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being part of this crazy thing.
Check out this old school rig. I found it laying in a bin somewhere. It's the Microsoft Life Chat.
Wow.
I know, it's like from last century or something.
It looks
but it
very
works.
An NFL like coach kind of gear.
I know. It should have a logo on it. I plugged it in and it just worked.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. What are you working on? What are we going to see at DevIn?
Well, I am doing a session on containers. So it's kind of a demystifying containers session. And then I'm doing a session on Git, kind of the same thing. How does Git work? Git and GitHub. And then I'm also doing a full day workshop on containers for .NET developers.
Wow.
And this will be a hands-on lab where we basically start off installing Docker for desktop and then building a core app, because that's the best way to play around with containers. Yeah. And then we understand what Docker is, how you create containers, how you run them. Then we'll put it in an Azure Container Registry, and then we will use it in various places: Azure Container Instances, Web App for Container. We'll look at how you do DevOps on it for build and release, and then we will dabble, and I do mean dabble, in Kubernetes, which is a very, very large topic.
Whole topic just onto itself, isn't it?
Exactly. But we'll just play around with it for like the last hour, just so we can get to the point where when someone says, "Well, have you ever done Kubernetes?" you can say yes.
Yeah, it scared me. I did.
I don't want to have to do it ever again. But are you an expert in it? Well, of course not. But you understand what Kubernetes is. You've seen a Helm chart. You've maybe used a Helm chart, and then that'll be pretty much it.
You know, you mentioned core right off the bat there. Is it still very much a Linux world when it comes to containers?
It is absolutely a Linux world when it comes to containers. You certainly can use Windows containers, and Windows containers get better and better all the time, but most people are using Linux. And the beautiful thing about core is that I, as the developer, I don't have to care, right? Because core runs great on Linux, runs great on Windows. Linux containers are a fraction of the size of Windows containers. There's more complete support for them in things like Kubernetes. I mean, Microsoft's working very hard to have first-class support for Windows containers and Kubernetes, but they started with Linux.
Right.
So that's kind of the
catch up with parity.
Right. So that's kind of the core scenario.
You're going to run into philosophical differences like case sensitivity.
Yeah. And then if you create a container, the beautiful thing about a container is it's portable. So, you know, here's a scenario. You've got a web forms, you've got an app, let's say it's a web forms app running on a server. It's a Windows server. And then you're told, hey, we're replacing that server. It's going to be a Linux server, by the way, right? What are the first two words that come out of your mouth? We can't use them right here. The first one's "oh."
No.
So, but if it was a core app, right?
Yeah.
Then it runs on Windows and Linux. And also, if you put it in a Linux container, then you can just pick that container up off the Windows server, slap it down on the Linux server, run it, and you as the developer don't have to do anything, and you don't have to care. You get immutability, you get portability, and that's one of the big benefits of putting something in a container. So it's like a VM without having to have the entire operating system. It sits on top of the operating system.
Yeah, the other thing I'm finding, and you know, I'm having this conversation on the IT side as well now, where IT folks are like, I'm being asked to support containers. What do I need to know?
Yeah.
And the big conversation still is that containers are inherently cattle versus pets, that you just don't modify them, you just build new ones.
Right.
The old ones. Because it's still with virtual machines, even though we've gotten really good at automating the generation of real virtual machines, they still, some of them end up as pets just because they are complex enough, they take long enough time to build that you can justify an update to them rather than just make a new one with the new configuration, kill the old one.
Right. Containers are, from that standpoint, a lot more lighter weight.
And quick enough that you can literally light up multiple instances of them, transfer work over to them. Like, I did rolling updates of websites back in the bare metal days, like in the 90s, where we literally would take machines out of the load balance pool. We would physically update them with new software. We get them configured and then start trickling workload over to them. And then we started doing it with VMs, and now we're doing it with containers, and it's just like, man, there's so much less pain. You're really afraid to light up. Well, and just this, get over this idea of lighting up an instance is a big deal. It's not. Light more.
Right.
And what's interesting then, right? And we come back to that topic of immutability. Something that we've run into on my stream as we've been building some things with containers and managing deployments is now you got to start thinking about, well, state can't be on the local machine because it's going to go away. Eventually, it's going to get shot, and we're going to bring up a new one somewhere else and roll people over there. So now things that we used to do, gosh, Richard, with web forms and pushing session state, application state, or cache, push that out of process onto another machine is even more important because that machine could go away. That server that you're actually hosting from, you want to be able to hand off connection to somewhere else and still get those same resources.
Yeah, I see it as a pit of success thing. Like, you just can't go down that trap. I used to do this talk where I talked about, like, look, the 3 things you want from multiple servers is surviving failure, continuous uptime during updates.
Oh, sure.
And being able to burst for load, and session state in process state on the server breaks all 3 things. You're literally eliminating the capabilities you wanted when you spread across multiple servers.
Yeah. So
go ahead, bud.
Oh no! I was going to change topic. You were.
I was going to ask Robert's opinion around session state approaches in containers. Like, do you get into that in the workshop?
I not at the moment.
But
I'll look into adding it. It's really more of an introduction. So there's just so much you can do in a day, and then you also have to understand that I assume we'll be on conference Wi-Fi, so it might take a while to build containers and download images and upload images. So I don't know how much time we'll have for stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
To be perfectly honest.
Do you get into the database stuff as well? Because it's pretty much the same problem.
Definitely want to get into the database stuff, whether you call a database that's sitting like in an Azure SQL or run a database in a container. Definitely want to have time to do something like that, because you can run your databases in containers too.
Sure, but the file depends on have to live somewhere else.
Right. Yep.
And thus with a state server of whatever it may be, same problem.
Yep. Yeah. So.
Right, but
certainly.
Go ahead.
Nope.
So if I am running database inside of a container, that doesn't feel like something that's as production ready, as something where I have database as a service, Azure SQL, Azure Table Storage, Cosmos DB, DynamoDB, these different service providers that are focused on database, or Azure Blob Storage, so I have file storage somewhere. I feel like container database as a container is a good solution when I'm testing, and I need to be able to pull off a container registry somewhere. Here's the state of our database that it looks like in production, and I want to be able to run some integration tests against that known good database configuration.
Yeah, I think it's potentially more of a, you use it when you need to use it. The idea of changing the server from underneath your database probably doesn't happen all that often. It could certainly happen for a web app that you wrote, right? Sure. Certainly for testing, where you might have multiple states of the database or multiple versions, then it's pretty easy to spin up a container, much lighter weight than a VM. It's also a possibility that you've got an application that you use once a year, right? Your March Madness application that has a database in it, right? One of the benefits of the container is the app works. Come March Madness, you spin up the container, the app's running, you spin up the database, the app's running, and it stays up there for however long March Madness lasts, which is only a few weeks. And then you take it down, put it away, and then next year, spin it up again. You don't have to worry about new versions of Windows, new versions of ASP and .NET Core or whatever. This app just works as is. Next year, I want to spin it up again, and nothing has changed, and it should work because nothing has changed, and then I can tear it down after March Madness. So that's another good use of something like a container. You can kind of think of it as the equivalent of it's a computer, under your desk, and once a year you turn it on, right? And then at the end of March Madness, you turn it off. This is kind of a more lightweight virtual way of doing that. So in that case, you could also run SQL Server in a container for that. But I agree, you're less likely to necessarily find container databases and containers in production. You probably have that data, which is running your business, is sitting in a real live SQL Server, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, with real live backup and real live redundancy and real live stuff, since it's real live data.
On the metal.
Well,
Yes.
Plus, when you're talking about brownfield migrations like this, I think you're trying to disrupt as few things as possible.
Right.
So odds are, the database is the last thing to be disrupted.
Yes.
Although the moment you're going to disrupt it, I can't imagine, SQL in a container is going to be the choice. It's going to be some other platform play,
Sure.
some other cloud platform play, most of the time.
Yep. Yeah. So it's certainly something worth playing around with to learn how to do it, and I think we'll cover it in the workshop because it's just a good thing to know how to do.
So in the chat room, Foreplay asks, is there anything particularly wrong with putting a database in a container? Not particularly wrong.
Yeah.
No.
If you're talking about SQL Server, the MDF files that you're going to depend on, right, your actual databases, they are in a file share independent of the container. The container then pokes into those things, right? So that your data is fine. It's living in a stable storage location, and you can create instances of containerized databases as you want. Heck, you can even set up a cluster and have them fail over between two. I don't know why it would. The licensing alone is a little punitive, but there's no reason it wouldn't work. It's just a shared file store.
Yeah, it's doable, and like anything else, it's a tool. It's a technique, right? You use it when it makes sense and when it works for you. Don't use it if it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you can do it, so it's worth playing around with and seeing how it would work, in case and when you come into a situation where that makes sense, where you want to be able to do that.
And as soon as you start thinking in those terms, like you're disrupting an existing database, there's so many more choices. I just don't know that I'm going to put my database in a container is going to win.
Right.
It just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done.
Yeah.
Right.
There's strong arguments there. Well, especially since you want to be able to kill a container kind of on demand, and you really don't want to do that to a database. You need a database to shut down and put the MDF away properly.
Sure.
When you kill it, then you're literally in a disaster recovery mode. Whenever you bring up a container of the instance of SQL Server, it's going to grab that MDF and go, "Oh, this isn't right," and then spend several minutes sort of figuring out the integrity of the database.
Yeah.
So that mechanism that we're used to in containers of just being able to kill stuff, it's very much that's not how databases think. So you are going against the grain.
Right, and it's probably not a best practice to just turn off the container.
Yeah, even
in the middle of doing something.
Yeah, if you've got a bunch of transactions going in a web app container right now, and you just kill it, that's bad too. But the recovery for that is very different from the recovery of murdering a database container.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Certainly, Dev here in the chat room says, "Could you use a container for a test database? Would that be a good use case scenario?" Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned off the bat.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to go because it's light.
I also wonder, Robert, if it makes sense to do database in container for front end read only cache, right? If I want to denormalize data, fine, go ahead and do that. You want lots of those things around, so replicate those little containers. Who cares if they fall down? It's front end cache.
Yeah, but I don't know that I'd use SQL for that, right? There's Redis and Elasticsearch, there are way better tools for that kind of object store behavior.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, but then the trade-off is use something you know versus something you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Right. And certainly for testing, yes, you can shut the container down. You don't care what happens to the database because you're just going to create a brand new image with brand new fresh data or empty data, spin that up. And then you could manage those containers in an orchestrator like Kubernetes and get some load balancing and failover for your test data. So, right, production data in the container we're not so sold on, but some of these other scenarios, they make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just then it's different. I mean, I'm always nervous when we're different from production.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I want to code in an environment as close to production as possible. Sure. Although I'd forgive SQL in a container because it's just a connection string different from the production database.
Right.
Right, but if you're using a provider model to be able to say, well, you know what, we can get Redis in a container here, we can get MySQL in a container here. You're right.
Yeah.
Change the connection string, point to the container location, let it do its thing, and when you get to production, you just change your connection string to your full database provider.
Yeah. Even SQL mode in Cosmos DB, like it's not a one-to-one mapping, but boy, the skills are not that different.
Mm-hmm.
No. So
that's all good stuff, man, and I'm glad we're having that conversation. I think folks are getting closer to using it. It's interesting for me because I live both in the dev world and the IT world to now see these topics start to surface in the IT side, where IT folks are going, "How do I care and feed for this? Like, what don't I know?"
Right.
That to me, that sense of gestalt means okay, we're making inroads in these communities now that people are caring about that part.
And then what we're going to do in both the talk and the workshop is see the great support that Visual Studio has for it. So when I first saw containers, it was all command line stuff. The only dev environment anybody ever used was Visual Studio Code. It was like IT stuff, right? It was all ops, no dev.
Mm.
And that's great. I think you should, as a developer, know how to do things from the command line and know how to do things in YAML files because that's what you're going to see. But when you're learning it and deving it yourself, why not take advantage of Visual Studio if and when Visual Studio provides great tooling for that? So,
right.
Just as Visual Studio knows how to publish a web app to Azure, knows how to publish a container to an Azure container registry, sure, you can pop into the command line and type the commands yourself, and a lot of people prefer that. But I kind of like when my IDE knows how to do that for me,
sure.
Understanding that the folks that wrote that feature understand it better than I do, because
well,
that's their job.
Like command line code anyway, right? Like you can make copies of that if you care to.
Right. Yep.
And
so I know, friends don't let friends right-click publish, but I got to tell you, right-click publish is one of my favorite features.
Well, it's just not right-click publish to production, right?
Right.
They publish to a test lab. Like, where does it go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
and our friend Paul Yuknowitz last week, he showed us a little bit about some of the new improved tooling for containers in Visual Studio.
Yep.
And it's tremendous to be able to see that you can now browse the file structure inside the container from within Visual Studio. Like, okay.
You can very easily find out what port it's listening on instead of having to look up the Docker command that lets you inspect the container, and then you get a massive amount of output. I'm trying to show hands here. A massive amount of output that you have to scroll through, whereas the container tools has a tab called ports. You click on that. Oh, there's the port it's listening on. Now I know how to go talk to that container when it's up and running.
Yeah, that's Visual Studio's sort of brilliance, right?
It is.
Putting a UI around all these different things we need to poke into, so there's a one-stop shop for it.
Well, another one of those tools that Visual Studio put a UI around. Watch this segue. Here we go. Check out this segue.
Yep, hanging in there.
How about Git tooling with Visual Studio?
Oh, masterful.
Thank you.
Wow, that's really something.
It's
that's changing my life right there.
It's significantly improved, and you're going to be speaking towards Git for developers.
Yes.
There's a lot that folks need to pick up beyond just, hey, commit my source code.
Right. So we start off in that talk trying to nail down the idea that Git itself is plumbing, and then there's GitHub, and there's Azure DevOps Services or Azure Repos is the place where you store the code, or Bitbucket or any number of other ones. But Git is the actual plumbing that enables you to do the source control.
Oh yeah.
And then, so you don't need GitHub. You don't need an Azure repo. You can do the source control with Git on your computer locally using Git. And we actually start off that talk by going to the command line and working with a couple text files to demonstrate that, and then switch over to Visual Studio and create an application and run that through the whole process of managing it. And we do use GitHub in that, and then showing all the things you can do inside Visual Studio. And of course, there again, you can go into the command line and type all the commands. They're all there. And, I'm not saying don't ever do that. I think it's actually good to look at the commands. I think you learn more about what's actually going on by looking at the commands. But that's the kind of thing that I would like to do kind of after the fact. And then for my daily production, I love the idea that Visual Studio just takes care of that for me, whether I'm checking in code, pushing up code, pulling down code, creating a new branch, doing a pull request, and then approving the pull request, which I'm not sure if it's out yet, but soon in a version of Visual Studio, you'll have the ability to manage pull requests from inside Visual Studio. Instead of having to pop over to GitHub. So you could almost get to the point where you're using GitHub and you never actually have to go to GitHub.
And we can do some of that already in VS Code.
Yes, VS Code also has a Git extension. It also has a Docker extension, it has a Kubernetes extension, has an Azure extension. So, but there you're not getting so much the IDE. You're not getting the Team Explorer, which is your UI for managing everything. You still have to know a little bit more about the command prompt, which is kind of the idea of Visual Studio Code. You're doing more typing, less relying on wizards, whereas in Visual Studio you're relying a little bit more on the IDE to take care of that plumbing stuff for you, and what you're typing is your code. And there's two great options. You can bounce back and forth. If I just want to read a C# file, for example, or if I want to make quick changes to it, I use code because it's lightweight. It's a great editor for code.
Nice.
So you don't have to choose one or the other, certainly.
But it is interesting. I think Visual Studio is staying true to itself by adding more support for these things.
Yes. Yep.
You aren't getting into the habit. Like if you like skipping between different windows, different apps, and so forth, that's the VS Code world. That's what it's about.
Sure.
Right.
Have multiple
terminals. It's kind of the context switching, right? We constantly talk about not having to switch context.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm editing code and then I need to go do something in Azure and I have to switch over, fire up the browser, well, the first thing that comes up is my MSN homepage. Oh, there's an interesting article I'll read. Oh, next thing you know, why did I do this? It's like getting up from your desk to go do something. You get distracted, you get back to your desk, and it kind of occurs to you that you originally got up for a reason. What was that?
Context switching, man. Context switching. Oh.
Yes. So I think one of the beautiful things about Visual Studio is there's a lot less of that. But again, there's a lot less what I call plumbing code that you don't need to learn. What exactly is the git command for creating a branch or doing a pull request? Nothing wrong with knowing it, but there's also nothing wrong with not having to learn it up front in order to go and do one. I think the best is knowing how to do it, being able to do it in Visual Studio easily, and then knowing the code so that if you find yourself in a situation where you're working with someone in VS Code, or just someone that loves the command line, that you're not completely lost when they switch out to the command line.
Absolutely. Right. And there's something to be said about it, right? There's the difference, right? Those folks that do like the command line, they're typically over in Linux. They're on Mac. And yeah, Visual Studio Code is a great way for them to operate. They don't want, typically, full IDE experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I think, there's only a few full IDEs out there in the modern world these days. And so, if you're used to working in them, it's one thing. If you're not, you may not want to go there. They're just different styles of work.
Right. And then there's also, there's the idea of I trust code I write. Do I trust what Visual Studio's doing. There's some people might have the idea that, or at least it's not so much trust, but I want to know. If I type the code myself, I know exactly what happened, and I did exactly what I asked to happen, right? If I right click and do something or make a menu choice, who knows what's going on? And I'm not trying to be negative or condescending about that or anything, but you have the ability to do it both ways. Me personally, I love the IDE. I love the full-featured. I used to call it the big fat IDE, but I don't do that anymore because that
It's not. Come on
that
now.
sounds bad. The full-featured IDE, which knows how to do this stuff, because I trust. Well, I also know most of them, but I trust the folks that actually wrote that feature. And I know that they're pretty smart about this stuff, and they've also spent a huge amount of time on it and tested to make sure that it actually does what it's supposed to do. So that's good enough for me.
We call the IDE Husky now, okay? It's come on. It's big boned. It's got a lot there to it.
I know.
Well, the boss of Visual Studio is coming to DEVint this year.
Yes.
Leroux. So, and we interviewed her on the show a few years ago. Like, her entire career at Microsoft, 20-something years worth, has been in studio. She was there right at the beginning of it, and when it was first being created in the 90s, and has been now leads the whole group. It's gonna be cool to see her.
When it was just a bundle, right?
Yeah. So those first two versions, right? The 90 and 6. It's like, well, it's supposed to be a unified IDE, except for that part where Visual Basic has its own, and C++ has its own, and FoxPro has its own, and
that's right.
Then there was Visual InterDev.
Visual InterDev. Yep.
And that shared an IDE with J++.
Visual J++, right? Yeah. Which then became Visual J++.net.
Briefly. And then it went away because Sun Microsystem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Microsoft made a great version of Java at the time.
I still have a lot of those T-shirts, actually. They're getting kind of ratty. My wife doesn't let me wear them in public, but I still have some of them.
They're pushing 20 years old, man. That's a long time.
I know.
I don't know that you should own clothing that long. There might be a rule.
You shouldn't wear it out of the house. That's the rule.
Oh, my gosh.
Those things absolutely happen. Wow.
Well, it's interesting, coming back to that topic of Java, right? We saw the announcement back in August that Microsoft acquired jClarity to help optimize the JVM for running on Azure. So now here's Microsoft getting back into supporting Java in a big way again. And almost 20 years later, trying to get back involved, but by not writing their own Java interpreter and things, but building a JVM, we're in good shape.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about the cloud, in particular, is that if you want people to use your cloud, you better make sure that the code they write runs well on your cloud.
Okay.
So it's not a question of Microsoft's Java versus somebody else's Java. It's Java. Java better run well. And let's go look and see what Java VMs people are using, and let's just make it work on our cloud, because if it doesn't work, they're not going to use our cloud. They use the other guy's cloud, which is bad. Or we're going to have to get back into the Java VM business, which is bad because there's other things we should be working on, like COG services and AI and VR and foldable phones and, more important stuff that's going to drive the stock price more than getting back into the business of creating VM. So it's liberating in a lot of ways because you are happy to work with anybody and you're happy to not have to write stuff yourself. So you just want, Kubernetes is another perfect example, right? It's not like Microsoft said, oh, we need to write an orchestrator that competes with Kubernetes. No, we don't. We need to make sure that we work with that. It is open source after all, and let's get friendly with everybody and make sure that it runs really, really well on Azure, because it's kind of important, and it does.
Yeah.
Well, and there were other orchestrators a few years ago. You just don't hear about them anymore once Kubernetes showed up everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
There's
end of the
there's
conversation.
Docker Swarm and there's Service Fabric, which
Yeah,
still exists.
DCOS,
Still being worked on. Yeah.
Well, and I got nothing bad to say about them. It's just that it seems like Kubernetes overwhelmed the conversation once AWS ran it and Azure ran it and Google obviously ran it. Like once you got to that place, it's like, well, if I'm going to learn an orchestrator, this is the one.
Right. So your best bet is to, contribute to it, help
make it better,
write it, right? And then make sure it works really well with your stuff.
Yep.
And then if there are changes that need to be made, you contribute those changes, and next thing you know, you've got great support there, and you've improved it.
Yep, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
I'm going to reflect over here to the chat room. Our friend Stelzy writes, let's see how long Oracle wants to have a collaboration with Microsoft. Actually, so this is Microsoft and Amazon both have, Microsoft's, right, they acquired a company that has a JVM, but Amazon has a JVM called Corretto that supports the Open JDK. So as long as there's an open source definition of what Java is, anybody can write anything that JDK can target and support.
Well, and I don't know that there would ever not be an open source implementation of the JDK at this point. I mean, I don't know how you would undo that genie. One would argue a non-trivial amount of the open source world came from the efforts around Java back in the day.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to consider that. What I find fascinating, we run into this on the show all the time, is that there's not a lot of difference between your average Java developer and your average C# developer. We're both running in managed memory worlds, and not purely object-oriented languages. Like we're more related than not. The relationship between a product owned by Oracle versus a product owned by Microsoft is interesting.
Quite interesting. Oh my goodness.
I'm just fascinated that it's for the most part, the leadership at Microsoft has turned over, right? Like it's another generation of people that are running Microsoft today. But Larry Ellison's still at the helm of Oracle. The man's over 70. And not that he looks it, because, tech billionaires, but like, wow, it's very interesting to think. And they really sell their database. Like that's the thing.
The licensing that Oracle is going through right now is with Java is definitely become controversial. And certainly, right, it opens the door for the cloud providers to say, hey, you can run on our cloud without having to pay a licensing fee. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
what I was fascinated with Oracle is when I look at what they own, they could be really serious about a complete enterprise stack. Like they really put energy into Java and worked on an IDE, and like they have all the ingredients. I just don't seem to be interested.
Yeah.
I think that's been that way almost throughout.
The whole time. Yeah. There's nothing anomalous there. It's fascinating to me as somebody who watches and has been involved in this industry for a couple of decades. Just like, wow, really? Okay.
You're giving up the part here that everybody likes, that facilitates.
Also, if they were pushing on that, I think we'd all be better for it.
Yeah.
When different companies are trying to solve similar problems, like that's, look at how much the cloud has grown because of the push between Amazon and Azure. Look at what happened to browsers in 2011, the run to maturing JavaScript between the V8 engine, the WebKit engine, and Chakra. Like those were good times when different companies compete around a technology and really press against them. It accelerates our industry.
Now, okay, but we're all kind of, to come back to the technology that started this little bit of the conversation, we come back to Git. Everybody's still kind of latched on to the same core engine that runs Git. We don't have open source implementations of it. We have open source implementations of the libraries and tools that access it, and then everybody ends up trying to build their own tools on top of it.
Right.
Robert, it feels like when I look at how Visual Studio implements their Git tools, it's a series of libraries, like you're saying, on top of the command line, right?
Right. Yes. The basic Git engine, which is open sourced. Then you build on top of that to work with your tools and then to store your code somewhere and have features there. So the competition would be more on the side of GitHub versus Azure DevOps versus Bitbucket versus, I know there's additional ones. Because Git is open source, anybody could make a site for hosting source code, right? The three of us could get together and create a site where we provide all kinds of features. We could add all kinds of things on top of it in terms of better manage your source code, better notifications, create an entirely different way of doing DevOps and have the best back end out there, even better than anything that exists now. Charge money for it, have a free version, have a charged version, enterprise support. We could do all of that and use the exact same Git that everybody else is using, because the value is not in that actual plumbing. The value is in what you do to make it easier to use and provide more features. So, Visual Studio looks at that and says, we can make it easier, much easier and easy for folks to use Git in their projects by just building that into the tooling. And then the back end, whether it's GitHub or Azure DevOps or whatever other ones, it says we can make it much easier for people to manage the actual source code repository and the things you do with that, which is typically build, release, test, run security on, do all kinds of checking, put that all in the back end and compete there. I don't know that it would make a whole heck of a lot of sense to create our own version of Git or fork it and create an entirely different version. I guess if you thought it was broken to begin with, you could do that, but it's kind of not. It's kind of not broken to begin with.
Well, and there have been other clients built on top of it, right? Like GitHub may be owning most of the attention, but they're not the only ones. It is good enough, and if it's not, you can improve it. I guess this is the part about open source is it's a way for us to not have to compete in this space because we all benefit from improving that space.
Right, and then there's a variety of front-end tools you can use. Visual Studio has a Git extension. Visual Studio has a GitHub extension. You install Git, you get Git Bash and Git CMD and Git UI, and there's all kinds of additional.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, yeah, that thing.
So then there's all kinds of additional, UIs that you could build on top of that, all based on Git itself, which is kind of nice because you benefit from a consistent set of plumbing, and then the value add is whether it's just the presentation or features you add on top of that. But if I know that Git push or Git pull means the exact same thing everywhere, then I have a little bit more freedom to choose different ways and different UIs.
Right.
Doing the exact same thing.
Not to make too big of a segue, but now let's talk about Chromium then, right? Because here you've got another case of an open source library, multiple platforms starting to implement it, and you did see when this first happened, folks saying, "Are we ready for a monoculture here when it comes to browser rendering?" As opposed to but there's just not a lot of discussion about that. What's the big deal?
So think of it from an end user perspective, right? There's nothing more frustrating than me using either my browser of choice or my browser of default.
Right.
And pages not running.
Yeah.
So, this doesn't work in Edge. This doesn't work in IE. Oh, it works in Chrome. Chrome's a great product, but I use Edge because that's what's installed, and I don't want to have to think about it. Like I use Bing on my Surface because that's the default. I use Google on my Android phone because that's the default, and I'm pretty happy with that. It works perfectly fine, right? Yes, I absolutely could search with Google on my desktop machine and Bing on my phone, but it works fine the way it is, so I'm happy with that. So I don't want things to not work at the basic level. So I think one of the benefits of Edge taking on that engine is that the pages are going to work, and then Edge can decide, how do I become a better browser than Chrome? Easier to use, right? better layout, etc. Not the plumbing. I think the plumbing should work. I'm a big fan of plumbing working and not having, I think my personal opinion is that you should, it's a benefit to have a standardized way of, you've got a standardized way of displaying, of laying out the pages in HTML and the code, and so that's a standard, and then a standardized way of browsing it at the very basic level, and then you compete on features,
right?
Not how you implement plumbing.
Yeah, and I would argue in the Git world, its plumbing hasn't changed very much. There's not a lot to modify here, but the rendering engines are iterating faster.
Oh, for sure.
It is interesting to think in terms of, and obviously even faster now is multiple teams, both Microsoft and Google folks, are contributing to Chromium in terms of how they want to render things.
Right.
So, I'm fascinated to watch this. Like, to me, it seems like a big deal to innovate outside of rendering. Like, what does that innovation actually look like?
And the benefit of having that unified rendering is we end up with, we're presenting video inside of a browser.
Sure.
Right? 10 years ago, you needed a plugin to do this. And now it's just a standard feature that everybody has. Right.
And then it's also a question of, how easy is it to catch up and how important is it to catch up? So, something like the cloud, it wasn't that easy, but it's extremely important to be able to catch up and have an industry or the industry leading cloud, right? Is it really that important to have the industry leading browser rendering engine? I don't know. Does that drive the stock price?
Well,
what it does do
with library that anybody can run.
Yeah, right. But what does happen on the flip side is if a large number of websites just flat out don't work in your browser, then people will stop using your browser, and then you've lost. So you could argue that it makes more sense to standardize on the industry leading plumbing, and then at least people won't stop using your browser, and then you get to figure out how do you make a better browser given that we're using a standard rendering.
So you're almost suggesting buying time by adapting the Chromium engine, and while that's being wired up, go plan and say, okay, after that's wired up, here's the cool new features that we're going to add on that make the browser better.
Yes. I would say that the most important thing for your browser is that it works.
Right.
That
innovation
you don't,
is not coming from the rendering engine. That is not where innovation is going to happen.
Yeah, and that you don't wind up in a situation where people don't use your browser and download the other one because the pages they want to go to don't work. So you make sure they all work, and then on top of that, you build value.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a great strategy.
More to a browser than a rendering engine, because I think a lot of people just don't even think about what's not the rendering engine.
Right, and the average consumer doesn't know what you just said, right? Right. Yeah. I go to a web page and the video doesn't play.
Yeah.
Right. Who are you going to blame? Right?
Yeah.
Well, the first person you're going to blame basically is Microsoft, because it's the Microsoft browser. So, stupid Microsoft, they can't even make a browser that works. Oh, my friend's using Google Chrome, so I'll download that. Oh, okay. Well, now I'm using Google Chrome. Well, guess what? Next thing you know, I'm on Google Mail, and next thing you know, I'm on Google Docs, and next thing you know, I'm not buying an Office 365 subscription. That ultimately winds up hurting revenue. So I think, one of the lessons we've learned is that you have to iterate and improve and drive forward, but you also need to be aware of the rearguard action. And in a world where it's really, really easy to switch browsers, and it's really easy to switch mail, and it's really easy to switch what you do your spreadsheets and docs in, pretty soon you make it really easy to switch the things that you're relying on for revenue. It's really easy to lose people out the back door as you're trying to get new people in the front door.
Right.
And I think I support the move in Edge because it shuts the back door.
Yeah, well, it takes away that argument, right? It's like this is not where innovation was going to happen. The fact that they're collaborating over the engine anyway, it's not like the Microsoft rendering engine people aren't still working. They are. They're working on Chromium.
Yes,
and then we're better off for it overall.
Yeah, and then you could figure out ways to display video better, right? And whether it's better video or audio or the ability to have the video pop out more interestingly. I mean, right now I'm looking at pretty much a flat screen, but let's say I wanted to.
There's a pop out button there.
All right, well, don't ruin my ideating with facts.
It's there. It's on Twitch. There's a button there to pop it out.
I believe you. But there's a. Is that a disc or there's a red and yellow circle behind your head, Richard? I want to zoom in on that. How do I do that? Right.
That's it. Yeah. That's a
maybe
hyper. That's a good disc. I put that there for a reason.
So maybe there's benefit to my being able to take the video out and zoom in on that. Who knows, right? That would be a feature of the browser that you could. I'm just making stuff up here, but that's where you could innovate. And spend your time innovating.
So there's a good point coming in here from the chat room from I Am Not Myself saying that they made the move to Firefox when Chrome announced they were disabling ad blockers and Firefox started introducing features to protect users more. There's that competition. It's not a rendering engine that's changed,
right?
But it's the interaction with the rendering.
That's a great example, right? These feature where you're in a meeting, you load a web page and a video shows up and all of a sudden you're announcing to the entire room that you're not paying attention, right? So I know in Edge there's 3 settings: always allow it, sometimes allow it, never allow it, but sometimes if I never allow it, the video won't show up at all. I want something else. Probably want the ability to have the video play. Or I want what if the browser would check my calendar, know I'm in a meeting, when the video plays, it automatically mutes the sound, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's got nothing to do with the rendering engine, right?
That's a little creepy, Robert.
And so I think we're now into the creepy realm of features, right?
That's where the innovation should come from, because now that's something that users actually then say, yeah, I use this browser because. Or you go to the other browser, well, how come you don't have that feature? The other browser has that. That's where the innovation should come from.
Well, and we're starting to see the essential conflict of having the default browser be from a company who makes its living on ads.
Yes.
So that's an interesting problem, right, for the way that you. I'm keen to see where they go in the whole digital exhaust area. Show me what data of mine was emitted from my browser, essentially without my control. Just by I think for the most part, people just aren't aware. You ever snap Wireshark onto your machine and just watch what happens? How much stuff comes flying out of your machine and over the internet because you opened the browser and went to a website?
Yep.
I've had what's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it. That the product Telerik acquired. That does that. It watches the network connections.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. And I can't remember the name either. I blame you.
Hey! Wait a second. Oh my goodness. And I am completely blank. Fiddler. Thank you.
Fiddler.
Yes, Fiddler.
Well, that's it. A whole different conversation to have about the data that's collected and who owns it and when it can be used and how much of it is benefiting me. And if you gave me the opportunity to fine-grain control, would I really know how to hit the sweet spot? Right?
What can I turn off that won't break things? On the other hand, just knowing what you're emitting, because right now for the average mortal has no idea what's spewing out of their browser.
Right. And every now and then, you kind of get a taste of it. So I was at DEVintersection, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, and I I'm out for a walk across the street and I go into the Swatch store because my wife needs a Swatch. And I don't talk to the two women who are the clerks at the store. They're not interested in talking to me because I'm only a customer.
Right.
So I walk in and I'm looking at watches, and then I see a watch that I think my wife might like. And so I reach over, touch it so I can see the price. Good to know. Put it down, put it back, leave. 2 days later, I'm getting ads for that exact watch in my browser. On the one hand, I like that because, yes, I was interested in that watch. On the other hand, that's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
Or is it creepy? Maybe it's good, right? So how did that work? Was I being watched, or was it just based on location? My phone was sending out specific enough location data that some advertising company knew I was at Swatch. And then did they know which watch I looked at, or did they know that in the past I've bought watches like that?
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
And it's your taste well enough to show you which watch to show. I have a running gag with a buddy of mine who's an IT guy who has somehow set up his phone so that it's always listening to him, that as soon as I hop into his car, I talk about some product we've never spoken of before, just the time how long it is before he gets ads for it.
Wow.
And for me now the game is coming up with the weirdest possible thing. Like right now he's getting ads for radial arm sauce.
For what?
Radial arm saw.
Okay.
Radial arm saw.
I thought you said
on a radial arm, right?
Okay, I thought you said
sauce.
That was it.
Radial arm sauce.
I like a nice radial arm sauce with my fettuccine.
It's made from used lubricating oil that you use in a. It has a metallic taste to it. Some people like it.
It's a thing. That was some good pine shavings. You got it made.
But the cool thing is, though, that the conversation's being driven. I think it's a good conversation to have, and I think a lot of time and effort should be spent on it. And you should ask the question, is it okay to just have this go unfettered, or is it okay for government to step in here? These are the right questions to ask, because it then drives a lot of thinking about it to at least make people, A, more aware of what they're doing, B, make the companies using it aware that
we're paying attention.
Probably not okay. Most people are probably not okay with you just taking this information without telling anybody and using it for whatever purposes you want. There will probably be some brakes put on that. What are the right brakes? What do people want? It's a great conversation to have. I don't think we're anywhere near close to the right answer, but it's absolutely the right time to have all kinds of voices, from it's fine the way it is to this needs to be stopped and government needs to stop it, and everything in between, and then figure out, where in the middle ground is a better place to be, and then keep iterating. So I love having the conversation, and because there are times when I think it's good. There are times when I'm not so sure. I mean, and I'm in the industry, and I don't even, I couldn't tell you a definitive answer.
I've been reading the history of regulations around automobiles. For a long time, you could just buy a car. At the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, there was no driver's license. There were none of those things, right? It was only when cars got to a certain level of success and started having an impact on society that we decided to put rules around them.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting to the same place now with search engines and social media and so forth. The fact that we're having this conversation is sort of an indicator that we are getting to a place where we're now thinking about and considering the rules that need to exist.
Yeah. What I'd love to see is somebody do a piece that shows what happens if you block all of this. No one can use your data.
Right.
What apps stop working on your phone, but more importantly, what scenarios do you no longer get?
Right.
And how many of them do you then miss?
That, right? Like we started doing lockdown on some of the Google stuff, and one of the things I noticed right away is if I, a feature that I quite enjoy, which is before I travel somewhere, I've got a Chrome open on my desktop machine. I'm searching the locations I'm going to go, and then when I go to my Android phone, all those locations are already showing in Map for me. I don't have to type them in again, right? Well, there's some cookies involved in that, and when you turn up the privacy, that feature goes away.
Right. I mean, let's say you go to a restaurant, is it a bad thing if 3 weeks later you get a advertisement or a coupon from that restaurant? Hey, we know you were here.
Yeah.
We know you haven't been back. Here's 10% off your next dining experience. Is that a bad thing?
That's an interesting question.
I don't know. I mean, some people would say yes. Others would say no. I would probably say no.
Yeah.
What I want more than anything is to stop getting ads for things I already bought.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's one. I have emailed a vendor that I bought something from and saying, I will be returning this unless these ads go away.
Amazon does it.
Oh,
can't do anything about it, right? But it's just...
Amazon will do it. I bought the Brad Smith book on AI, which is very good, by the way, and then continued to get ads. Oh, you should buy this book. Well, not only did I buy it, but I've already read it. And by the way, I've already read it. Because the Kindle reader is syncing pages. So you know that I've already read the book. Stop asking me to buy it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, I guess I'll see you in a few weeks, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is coming up in a few weeks, isn't it?
It is. It's close. This is our last show before the event itself, and we start streaming from the event.
Cool. So what are we streaming from the event, by the way?
That's a great question. I may be dragging you into that loop, too, because we're working.
Be there all week.
Plan for that.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah, no, I'd love to have you do it.
Cool.
If you have a toolbox you can bring along to help, we might have a need for something like that. That was that was okay.
It was something. I don't know what that was.
You need to work on that one.
Okay, fine.
It's funny in there somewhere. Just don't know where.
Where is it? I'm gonna find that. It was funny for a second, okay? Jeez, I tell you. Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert.
Thanks, boys. Glad to have been here.
We will.
All right, so now I just hang up and that's it?
Yep. We will excuse you. Take care.
All right.
See ya.
See you guys.
And there he is. He's out. Terrific.
Wow.
Always great talking to him.
We went all over the map on that one, but all good thinking, right? Tell we've been doing this for a while, and we're concerned about a variety of how these topics go together.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Now we have another guest coming up here.
Oh, that's a double header for our Halloween show.
It's a twofer. It's a twofer, and I saw her sneak into the chat room just a little bit ago.
Yep. I don't know if I'm supposed to make baseball references anymore. I think the World Series is now over.
It is, right? And Washington won last night.
I don't know how you feel about that. That's sort of your end of the world.
So, okay, the Nationals, they were the Expos in Montreal. I'm like, okay, I'm not.
You can't agree with them. They were French Canadian for a long time.
Right. I thought they were. I can't stand Washington first off in sports, right? I've got to deal with the Capitals, and they won the Stanley Cup last.
Yeah.
What? 2 years ago.
World Series too. Like, what's up with that?
I know, right? So it's like, at least the football team, they're still. We've got them under the thumb here. We're not going to let them get out. Same thing with the basketball team. We'll work on this.
Right.
So, let's see what happens next here. We thought we were doing a good thing here in Philadelphia, taking Bryce Harper, their star outfielder and home run hitter, and it didn't work out at all for us. Thanks so much. So let's get out of baseball. And actually, there was a statistic this weekend was one of the only days in history. It's only happened like 16 times where North American basketball, hockey, football, and pro baseball were all occurring on the same day.
Yeah. Normally we're supposed to have different. It's just that everybody's seasons have gotten longer.
Yes.
right? That's the real thing. Well, like every game they can play means more revenue, so they just keep pushing out the number of games.
Backing up the winter seasons, extending the
springs. That's what's happening.
So let's add Michele in here, and let's talk to her about orchestration. Kubernetes is a big deal with her, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
There we go, Michele. Add. And let me get her scene set up right here. And let me get her scene set up right here. That's Twitch, I hear.
That's coming from her, right?
I'm gonna hang up now.
You better mute some things. Earbuds in.
Am I in the right spot?
All I see is blue coming from you.
Yeah.
I have to tell it to use the camera. Hang on. Apparently, you have to do that every time.
Skype is finicky like that.
Audio settings. See, here I am setting it up on my main camera, but now I can't find where Skype lets me change it. Hang on. Audio video settings. Here we are. Here we go. Okay, I got it. Wow.
Closer.
Well, you turned it off.
Yeah.
No, you don't see yet?
No.
Yeah, I see that it's connected. So.
There we go.
See myself.
Oh my goodness.
Hang on. Don't say anything. Don't say anything yet. Don't say
All
anything.
Right. Hold back.
While I get the scene set up here. Oh my goodness. 1 second. I'm gonna finish getting right. We have to make sure that everything's lined up right. It's there we go. I think we've got it. Let's welcome. There's Michele.
She is.
Hello. You're doing your best. Is that?
Hola.
Now is it Morticia? Is that who you're trying to be? Morticia Adams?
Good guess.
Pretty much nailed it, yeah.
You just saw the movie with my kids, so you know.
I've just never seen you with black hair before. It's 20 years. Yeah. So
Do you need me to put a headset on, or is this loud enough?
Yeah, the audio isn't great. We're getting a lot of echo and static coming off of you.
Do you think Morticia wore headsets? Let's see.
Don't we all? Well, that's a look.
It's stylish. Okay.
We're getting there.
Yeah, you just got to switch the audio over.
Talk to me.
So much better.
There we go.
Yeah. All right, maybe the microphone's not quite cooperating yet.
Yeah, we're not getting the microphone yet.
Yeah. So I guess you can hear us. Yeah, little clips here and there.
We're getting there. Oh, is that it?
I think it's there now.
There we are.
See that the whole time? Because I wasn't hearing you.
Okay, we weren't we weren't hearing you either, so it was very mutual.
So you were just seeing my mouth move, like
that's it. Yeah.
You look like a Muppet.
You guys gave me. I got in at 9:30 because I thought you wanted me at 9:30. So you gave me time to get a coffee, which makes me a better, happy person on your show.
Fantastic. Yes, coffee for everybody. Here we go.
Yeah, no, I'm out. I think I'm going to buzz up to She Who Must Be Obeyed, see if she can bring me one. That would be great.
Absolutely.
She keeps poking her head in here, see how much trouble we're causing.
All the
Jet fuel.
Absolutely.
So, I saw Robert's show. That was fun.
Yeah.
So, and Robert started talking to us about some of the great tooling for containers that's now come into Visual Studio and how to get folks that are doing .NET up to speed with containers. But, there's there's sneaking in coming here.
There she is.
There she is. Hello. And with her own pair of goggles, no less.
Yeah.
So, and right, there's something really to be said about just getting your application into a container is a good starting point. But you've really got some great insight into, okay, what happens after you get into a container?
Well, there's a lot that happens.
Yeah,
Is it
right?
good or is it bad?
That's like just such a loaded like intro to so many things, though, right? So
Let us
we
go.
talk- thing is we, you know, we got the whole development cycle, which is what everybody needs to understand to get started with containers. And, you know, how do I do a Docker file, and how do I, you know, run that locally with Compose, or how do I deploy that to my local kube cluster, and, you know, play around. And then how do I do interesting things like scale those out, see how multiple instances work. Do I really have a, you know, container that is working well in a load balanced environment, right? Things like that.
You mean you can have a container that doesn't load balance well?
Well, yeah.
I make them all the time.
Today, nobody should build like a net new app, greenfield, that doesn't load balance well, and you're kind of forced into that with a lot of the new things that even ASP.NET Core kind of makes you have to do, like for data protection, for example, right? You don't get that for free anymore, right? So you can't just do a machine key and stuff. So you're forced to build something that has a back end, right? And that's a good thing, because what you want is to be forced into, you know, a pit of success, and that might mean some work. But when you migrate these legacy apps into a cloud, you know, instance or app services or containers, doesn't matter, right? It's a challenge, because they're not always built for that. They need sticky IPs, sticky session, and if you know that, you prep for it, right? And it can be set up to be okay, especially with the app services, right? Like there's settings to give you the sticky IP, so that's nice, even with a containerized target. So.
But generally, like, I wouldn't want a sticky IP. I'm trying to avoid that like the plague.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've even seen in the past where like you can get, you know, sessions get stuck going to one machine versus another, to where when that machine is no longer available, you know, because of caching, right, the user's still getting sent there and it's not working because it's not there. But it's not gone, so they haven't, you know, rebuilt a new node. So, you know, I haven't seen that for a really long time, but I remember that it's like sort of like it's right. So, so now I'm like,
you know, you get into what's a real load balancing strategy. Like, what's the mechanism that you're using to actually distribute load across machines? Because it's really not that sophisticated, and often, you know.
Well, I mean, it can be though, right? Because it depends on if you're using at the front. You know, you have front door, and then you've got traffic manager, and then you've got WAF and app, you know, the gateway, and then you've got now the Kubernetes cluster, and then it has its ingress and routing technique or whichever router that you choose to use, and then within there, you know, you're getting to the actual pod and the actual container. So, you know, there's layers, and those layers get added on when you need things like a WAF and, you know, secure.
Hang on, you're using a couple terms there. I want to make sure that everybody understands a WAF.
Web application firewall.
Okay, it's not the wife acceptance factor. We've got a colleague that talks about that.
I like that. Can I just use that at home and then give my husband another acronym that he'll say, don't use that in public because nobody gets you?
There you go.
He does it all the time. He's like, I say I don't have the bandwidth for stuff, and he goes, Michelle, people don't talk like that.
People do.
People don't understand you. No.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, another mask there.
Yeah. No, you're amongst your people.
He gets me.
Yeah, totally does.
But now we've seen the introduction of Azure Front Door. And here's a new service that's going to provide that capabilities to allow folks to route to different services, to set up different endpoints that all come in from that first entry point. Didn't we used to do this with just load balancing and everybody goes to the same pool of applications, the same pool of containers? Why do we need Front Door now?
Well, so it's like anything that you add in front, right? Do you want additional layers of denial of service prevention before you get into the actual cluster, right? And that's commonly desired thing. You know, other rules you might have at the firewall level that, you know, reject requests early. The WAF helps you with the OWASP, you know, 3.0 list, right? And rejects requests that have potential malicious intent, which means now you have another layer behind front door, right? So front door wouldn't do that part, perhaps, you know, per se. You can also just use Traffic Manager, which is, you know, probably the predecessor to front door, right? Which gives you maybe less sophisticated but useful and perfectly acceptable. I mean, some customers aren't using front door; they're just using Traffic Manager, and then they do the weighted distribution across regions, for example. So that's one way to do it. But even when you get past Traffic Manager and into WAF, and then you finally get back from WAF into the backend pool, which is now your cluster, you now still have other routing to do, because, like, think about API routes. If I want to use REST, resource-based routing, where I'm going to, you know, users or profiles or, you know, shopping carts or whatever the thing is, right? These microservices that serve up access to certain resources, but I might need to allow access to this resource from a different route that feels friendly. So now your API is responsible for what are all the routes that can get to me? Can I get to users from accounts users as well as just users? And then, you know, now my router in the, you know, cluster can have some intelligence around getting to the right microservice, you know, that it will be load balanced within there, right?
So an interesting example of this that I'm running into right now on stream, on my stream over there on C# Frets, is we've built a bot that lives inside of a container, and right now I've built it quite simply as one application, but there's some microservices, there's some API controllers on there that are ripe to be broken out into their own services, where I want them to listen for a pub sub notification from Twitch. An event happens on Twitch, and I want to receive that notification and do some processing with it. Well, I need to verify it came from Twitch. There's a signature that's in a header that I want to verify before my API even starts processing it. It feels like there's a little bit more of that front door processing that I could delegate, and when it does come in from those locations, route it over here to this API that's typically behind the scenes and nobody can really access.
Well, is it a push or a pull, right? The events.
They're a push to me.
Yeah. So, and it's, I guess, not a secure push, right? So
it's a webhook.
Listening to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a signature that appears in the header. So.
Yeah. So the signature will give you it's a signing of the actual event payload, so that you know it's not tampered with. So you validate that, and then you know the source, because you trust now that since it's a valid signed event, that whatever it says it's from, it is really from them. That's all you need, right?
Yeah. Right. So I can firewall that off before it gets to my API and actually is processed. Let the front end decide whether or not to accept or reject that request to start.
Right. Yeah.
See, I've got to start leveling up
question?
My server. Well, no, that's like this feels like gosh, Michele, it feels like this is exactly the kind of thing that I need to do to level up this application that I'm building.
Right. Or just to have fun, right? Because you obviously want to do it. You should do whatever you want to do.
Can you talk to my wife? There's a.
Oh wow! You totally took that out of context, didn't you?
No, hang on. We had a little car accident. I had a car accident. I was rear-ended a couple weeks ago, and I got to have a rental car for a better part of a week or so, and I got to have.
Did you get a Maserati?
I had a Dodge Challenger.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, I have one of those. I just got rid of mine. I love that car. I had a Hellcat. Love it.
So I was saying to the wife for the whole week,
I might keep this.
The daughter just turned 16. We could just give her the car, and Daddy buy himself the Challenger. And the wife acceptance factor only.
A 16-year-old should have a Dodge Challenger Hellcat.
No, she doesn't get
700 horsepower and a red key.
No, she doesn't get that. No, she gets the old car.
The old car.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I mixed that up. See, I was rooting for the daughter. Sorry. Yeah.
Where is it? Hang on.
You're talking to the wrong person because, like, I kind of have a bit of a car fetish.
Yeah. Well, as near as I can tell, all the women in Jeff's household all have at least 1 horsepower.
Yes, they do. They all have 4 legs and yes.
Yeah, 1 horsepower is just not enough.
No. They need more horsepower to go to the horses, but once they're there, they don't care about the horsepowers.
Right.
Okay, got it. You actually have horses? Are we now on that?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Wow. Okay, well, that's nice.
That's a thing. So what Jeff needs to be able to do, coming back to the original point of of what you were saying, is yes, Jeff needs to be able to, as he wants to, buy the Hellcat. See how this works?
Right. What color would you get? They have some pretty wicked colors. They got a purple one. They got that bright green, limey sort of green. Really nice, though. It looks amazing.
I feel like
I had a blue one.
I feel like Twitch has betrayed me with the purple here. I got into purple. I was into the pastel purple, and then they went and changed the purple on me at TwitchCon in September. I'm like, thanks so much. At least I didn't get the tattoo yet. So,
yeah, hold off.
So I'm right. I thought there was a white one with blue racing stripes. I thought I saw that.
There's all kinds.
Yeah.
Is that the one you want?
Yeah.
That's the one that.
As a Penn State alumni, right? As a Penn State graduate, that's Penn State colors for me. The white with the blue. All right, now we're talking.
Yeah.
I've had black cars.
I just got a white car with a red interior, which is fun. Just because,
Right.
Because that's a thing.
That's totally a thing. No purple sequins. Carrie's here saying I need the purple sequins. Okay. That's got to be coming to the event also. I've got to be wearing, and it fits in so perfectly in Las Vegas. So Michele, I have a jacket, a purple jacket, a jacket with purple sequins on it. It's my blazer.
Mm-hmm.
So see what we did there.
I like sequins.
So
and it's Ward Bell,
you know what?
Because he's going to be there.
Yeah, and he'll be wearing fur, maybe.
Right.
Or lame.
Yeah. It's kind of like he's trying to outdo me or something. Like, I thought I dressed nice. Now it's like, if I don't, like, flash it up, right? Yeah. I don't fit in.
Well, you I don't know if you were there when Stacy and Ward met, when Ward was wearing that zoot suit. Which is, I think it's amazing.
I've seen the zoot suit. It's a fantastic suit.
1930s zoot suit. Well, they're both clothing industry people. So next thing you know, they're in the corner speaking a language none of us understand.
Right, like the cut and the fit and the
stitching technique and like all of these things. But I just like, we're used to it in software being one speaking a language nobody understands. Like our limited amount of bandwidth to see another industry do the same thing. Or they just go off and...
They all do it.
Yeah, it's true. It's the thing.
Try to listen to a bunch of doctors. Like, they just, like, go into, like, the patients and not the person, but, the interesting cases, Yes.
And all acronyms, rapid fire. Like, you have no idea what they're saying.
Pretty much.
All the TLAs.
Of what? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, very true. Very fair. We can hardly complain.
No.
I think our stuff's cooler. I get the saved lives, whatever, response every once in a while when we compare how hard we both work. But okay.
Save lives.
You get to play that one. I've seen him play that one actually.
You were there for that one. You were there for that one, Richard.
There for that one,
First time he did it, like I lost my, stuff.
Oh no, you'll spray coffee across the room on that one. That's a full spit. That one. I realize we all have kids in different brackets because Jeff's are teenagers. Yours is still a preteen.
11.
Both my girls, who are in their 20s now, are on business trips for Halloween. Like in their respective careers, traveling for work, they're gone. So it's like we're going to do Halloween without the kids around because they're hardly kids.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and mine, I'm trying to see if I can get him interested, like at all, in computers. And his first, like, you know, he's decided he wants to be an entrepreneur and get a Bentley. He likes Bentleys now. So we've taught our kid about liking cars, and now he's trying to up us.
Nice.
And I'm like, yeah, dude, you're gonna have to work for that one. He goes, work. So yeah, you're gonna have to work for that one. My only child, spoiled person. So why don't you get a startup and take care of your parents one day? And then we started watching the Bill Gates, you know,
on Netflix.
Show about Bill Gates, right? The Netflix show. And so he actually got into it. He started watching. So I'm slowly inching him towards, oh yeah, I have to work for stuff. Like I'm telling you, baby steps, man. You want the Bentley? Look at how hard people work, right?
Yeah. So, no, the eldest is the artist, so she uses computers all the time, but for drawing. But the younger one, you know, you wanted to be in computing. The younger one was headed towards health sciences, but she ended up in the computing side of it. The group that she's working for, which is specifically around safety in hospitals, she is their data analyst. So didn't want to be in computing, but somehow was just really good with databases.
Sucked into it.
Yeah. Well, I show her a picture of her at a database conference when she's 4. You know, I mean, admittedly, it was besides SeaWorld, which is the real reason she wanted to be there. But, you know, maybe she got some of it by osmosis. And now she sent a picture of her, you know, boarded the flight off to a conference where she's presenting on healthcare outcomes.
But
maybe we ought to do like a kids track in the future at the whole Azure AI DEVintersection conference. You know, like get a kids track, and like they do it how at Build. You know, people are starting to bring their teens and whatnot, and they're actually coming to the conferences and seeing that huge amount of people, like, you know, going to sessions and seeing the keynote, and it's kind of exciting. Maybe that's an interesting way to get that going.
Yeah, and you know, Carrie mentioning Code Mash, also that conference.
Yes, they do
really
it as well.
strong. Not only just kids tracks in terms of kids can do technology, but also kids as teachers and kids as presenters. I think it's a very interesting angle. I just feel like kids and Vegas doesn't go together.
Kids in Orlando.
Yeah, maybe not Vegas, but maybe Orlando, right?
Yeah, no.
Orlando, it could work because people bring their kids sometimes. Yeah. Hey.
I'm not opposed. That's an interesting idea. We will have to consider how that works.
Let's work on that.
When I went to TwitchCon here in September, right? Huge. It takes up that entire San Diego Conference Center, right? The place where they have Comic-Con, and 75,000 people at this event. I mean, just stupid amount of people.
And you can't get in. I live here and I've never gone. I need somebody in the know who can help me get tickets.
Connections, yeah.
If only we knew somebody.
If only there was somebody.
Somebody.
Anyway.
Are we trying to say we might know somebody?
Right.
Let's talk about that later.
Yes.
11-year-old, hello, we're running out of time. He likes Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon and all that, right? Too. So, and of course Marvel. Everything Marvel.
Oh, so Comic-Con,
everything Tony Stark. That's where he got the Bentley from. Tony Stark has a Bentley, so you know.
So TwitchCon, we don't have some of those folks there, but my gosh, the folks that you see on YouTube, that you see on Twitch, all over that event. But where I was going is, they made the event very kid accessible, and it's not easy to do. But they also took some extra steps to make it inclusive. And it's interesting things that you see, Richard, as conference organizers and planners, when you see that medical assistance dogs are welcome and encouraged at a conference center. That's a pretty big step to take, because of all the facilities that you now need to provide, because it's not just kids and people, but dogs. Are you kidding? And they're welcome, and they're quiet, and they sit in the rooms. You're giving a presentation, and there's dogs sitting on the side of the room. It's like, that's a thing now. All right.
Yeah, I know.
Well, didn't Damian Brady just do a presentation where he had to put his his newborn, like somebody held on to the baby while he did his presentation because he didn't have in Sydney. And I thought I saw somebody else, although I don't know them personally, who did a presentation with the baby. Maybe it was like a user group or something, but like had no choice but to bring the baby and just like quietly sleeping right there.
I mean, coincidentally, I was with Damien, with the little guy at breakfast, and he's a 8-month-old baby boy. Like, he ate for a while, and then he was being an 8-month-old. So having had some practice, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be changing shirts anyway. Hand him over, and went around the breakfast buffet for a while, keeping him busy while Damien got something to eat. I don't know. You know, everything about an event's more fun with that stuff too, right? Like, it's interesting, of course, with the group we're sitting with, knowing who's had kids and who hasn't, as to how they react to the chaos that is an 8-month-old who's had enough to eat and is squishing pineapple between his fingers.
Oh my God, I will never forget. I know we're supposed to talk about container stuff, but I will never forget that one of my best friends that used to live around the corner from me, I would say to her before I had a kid, you know, I worked 16-hour days, right? And weekends were also frequently fully populated with work and deadlines. And my friend had a kid, and I'd be like, oh, well, you know, why don't you come over for a glass of wine? And she's like, oh, we got to do homework. And I'm like, how hard can the homework be, please? You know, like, come on, like 4, like he's 4. So then I go to have a kid, and I'm like, you know, I'm used to working 16-hour days. This is a piece of cake, please. Like, I've got this. I mean, a baby's going to make me tired? Come on. And then I have the baby, Juan Pablo, and I'm like, oh, God, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to homework. Let's just throw it out there. Homework is hell.
Yeah.
Okay? It's hell. They're like squirrel. Try to get them to focus for like more than one problem at a time, let alone get it done. Like, the bribery that goes on in this house is unbelievable. Okay? Like, forget about the $1 allowance a week. I'm like, okay, here's a list of 10 things you have to do every day. I'll give you $1 for every one of them. You want to buy that game on Xbox? That's like $10 a day. It's going to take you 7 days, and you can get it, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, he's like, but I want it this Saturday. And I'm like, well, you got to catch up on the back homework. I'll give you $5. So, but it's like crazy.
So
yeah,
so
exhausting. Like, work is easy. Work's easy. Like, that's exhausting.
So my daughters went to cyber school for a while. They were being educated over the computer. They sat in front of a webcam and would chat with teachers during classes. And all of their homework, all of their schoolwork was on their own. They had to learn to manage their time, because outside of that hour or two each day that they were on camera with teacher learning whatever lesson, they were on their own to get their work done. And my wife and I would just give them, look, you manage your time. I'm going to come back and check in with you at 5 o'clock. You better be done, or else now you're eating into time with X, Y, and Z, and you're not going to be able to.
Right.
Well, this year they said, we want to go back to normal school. We want to go back to public school and be able to go to football games, be in the marching band, all of these things. And they're back at the schools, and the homework that they're given is nothing compared to what they had for cyber school, where everything was homework. And now they know how to manage their time. Now when it comes time for homework,
have a superpower.
Exactly.
That's really
interesting.
Kids are
because I took my son out of public to go to a smaller class size before we got to middle school, because I was terrified, like, how is this going to go when there's 40 kids in a class? Oh my God. And you know, it's just gotten harder because the work is like, wow.
So what's really been interesting, yes, the work ticks up. The kids now in public school are being told, do this Khan Academy lesson. And they're like, I don't know what to do. This is so weird doing my lessons over computer. And my daughters are like, piece of cake. I've done this for the last 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, you and, yep. That's right.
I think we're used to teaching adults. Teaching kids is very different. And also, you know, I love that you're talking about, class of 40, way too big. And you think, I've seen you in front of 1,000 people trying to communicate a message effectively. Like, it's very interesting to think in terms of, we teach as well. And I mean, props to real teachers, because clearly we're pretend teachers. but just that how you think about those scopes when you're thinking about learning as well as teaching, and with your kids on top of that, like it's an interesting balance of what's practical, what works effectively.
Well, and that's a little bit different too, because a lot of times when you're presenting to thousands, you know, you're not having conversations, and you're not sitting there saying, okay, now go do this for 15 minutes and focus. So it's kind of almost a push, right, as opposed to an interaction. And the interactions come after when you talk to people, unless you're in a small workshop where there's maybe a little bit more kind of collaboration. And with kids, I mean, the teachers are not teaching maybe difficult concepts, but they're teaching concepts to kids that don't get it, and they have to find a way to reach them. And then when they bring that stuff home, and he's doing, divide by fractions, I mean, I know how to do that stuff, but I don't know how they're teaching him how to learn it.
Right.
So if I go and say, 3x plus 3y, and then let's move the x's and the y's, he's not learning that way yet, right? So they have this other trickery around how do you learn divide by fractions, and I realized right away, like, I can't do this. Like, it's going to get to a point where I can't, even if I know the stuff, which pretty soon I won't be remembering the stuff that he's bringing home. I don't know how to teach it the right way. So now every kid goes to like external things like Mathnasium and, Sylvan Learning, and, like they have to go to after school tutoring, because those guys have the material and know how to do it, right?
It's the syllabus, know how it's being.
And I suppose I could go and like look it up and try to do it, but then here's the problem: when I'm away, because I travel for work sometimes, right? Then it all fall apart those weeks, and I can't let that happen. So we need a routine that's like sustainable when I'm away, and so we've got to kind of have people that can help him get his homework done. Like, kids can't do it on their own anymore. They can't do the homework by themselves, and I don't know what that means, if there's too much homework or what, but I'm just looking for him to complete it at this point and understand it. I'm not looking for like Harvard right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's totally premature. Let's see how we are when we're in high school.
Well, I think it's interesting you said about teaching the kids the different ways to do things, and it's different from how we learned. Richard, when my kids were in school, I had them learn their times tables through 10.
Right.
So they went and they would go in and take the test, and even though they wrote down 5 times 6 equals 30, they didn't show their work because they knew 5 times 6 equals 30. They
memorized it.
It was memorized, right?
Yeah.
Fine. We all have our times table memorized to a certain number, whatever.
Right.
But the school wanted them to show work, drawing boxes and showing multiplication. I'm like,
right.
They memorized it.
Memorized.
That was. Yeah,
so it was
the,
marked wrong because they didn't show work. It's like, I don't think you get it.
I hate it when it says show your work, because showing how you broke down the problem from a mathematical perspective, that's fine. Okay, let's do simplest form, right? First, it's not simple, then you make it simple. But the drawing part, like, my kid hates to draw. He does not want to draw. It's not his special skill. It's not his superpower, and he's not interested. So that's like a square looks like a circle, like he's like, so whatever, right? He's like me, right? I don't draw. I could do boxes though, but like that took time for me. Boxes and arrows, diagrams, technology, blah.
Architect. There's just no way.
Right. Like, I'll be on a call, when I'm doing design work and discussions with people, customer, discussions, and I'll have like 30 pieces of paper at the end of the day, all with pictures that I drew while I talk to them, right? Like, so that I can do. But they're not really like for anyone else to look at but me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're not pretty until they go into PowerPoint or Visio or something. So.
Now, have you ever tried doing those types of drawings using OneNote, so you could get a little bit of recognition and be able to grab them out of there and make it a little bit easier to continue using those diagrams as a starting point instead of they're just on paper?
Well, my starting point is my PowerPoint stuff that I have, right? So, I mean, if I know it's going to be similar, I'll just go right to that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't use a tablet right now, so to draw it like on OneNote, it's actually kind of like therapeutic for me to draw out and sketch while I'm talking and thinking about what the person's saying. That's how I work. And I type when I think a lot too. Like it's my style. It's probably weird, but I do that anyway.
Yeah, Office Lens for me was the godsend. Drawing stuff out on a whiteboard, and then Office Lens would straighten the picture, take out the highlights, like make it absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing how good Office Lens is.
Yeah.
Just for receipts.
Yeah, sure. I bet cleaning up receipts too, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, and it's funny because the product's kind of going away. It's just being integrated in anything. Right? If you take a picture of anything and try and upload it to OneDrive, it'll try and Office Lens it on you.
Yeah.
Just to straighten it out.
I guess I should try that. I've seen that. Some people have shown me that they have it, but I haven't tried it out. So that's a good idea.
There was a
when
thing,
are we learning, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is when you start doing all these deployments with like complex architectures and you're thinking about routes and microservices and like all of the, various topology requirements, and then you got to do the different forms of diagrams like the threat models and how you're securing everything. And I mean, you end up with like this many like diagrams, and they're all custom, right? But if I do that on paper, if I could snap that and have it go, that'd be awesome.
Funny you should say that. Remember at Ignite last year? Was it at Ignite or was it? I think it was at Ignite. They and they demoed it again at Connect. They had a series of magnets that were the various Azure services. Do you remember this, Richard? They
magnets.
Yeah, Scott Hanselman and Christos had these magnets for each of the Azure services, and you could put them up on a whiteboard, draw lines between them, and put names on things. Just write the name on the whiteboard, take a picture of it with an I forget what the app was called. It was Azure something, and it would generate those objects. It would stand those up and give them the appropriate names in Azure for you.
Oh, okay. So not even turn that into a Visio drawing. Actually turn that into a set of services running in Azure.
There it is. Boom. Running.
That's cool.
And I bet it's secure and it's locked down and it's ready to scale. And
don't get crazy now, Ms. Bustamante. My goodness.
It's up and running.
Let's just put it in perspective, right?
It still needs to be configured, but you've got all the pieces.
It's good to have starting points. It's helpful.
You've got all your starting points, and you could even specify how many instances of an application you wanted running, right? And it would generate that many, all kinds of things. And we had a neat collection of magnets that folks could get their hands on. So
I mean, it is pretty amazing, like how Azure does give you like sort of that really kind of easier onboarding right into a lot of stuff, and I think that's one of its special, powers, if you will, right, compared to say Amazon. In Amazon, the approach is you gotta really know everything you're gonna do right up front, network topology, everything, and then you go, right? Whereas again, I think with Azure, you could start playing, but then you still have to roll up all that knowledge, right, at some point, and figure out like how we're gonna really design the topology and the resource groups and the routing and the security and how we're connecting that to access through a DevOps cycle, and how locked down do we need to be, right? Large organizations with healthcare and finance and government, they're like pretty much the full Azure security story has to be baked, right? All the way from your Office 365 AAD and policies and roles and who's allowed to get into what. And it makes it really hard to be productive in the beginning because you got to get all that right. And then you go to prod, like just, there's literally like almost a year's work to do, right? And then there's the other side, which is, simpler topology, smaller organization, just want to be productive. You're still secure, but you're not maybe with that list of like, 500 security controls that have to be ticked. So you pick good choices, and it's, again, there's layers of security, right? There's, oh my God, we cannot do this, unless we've ticked every box. And then there's, this is pretty good. And then there's people that don't look, and then they realize, oh crap,
I'm kind of wide open.
Yeah. And
I've never done that.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the mission critical, value of the data and what could it do to your business. And the bigger the business, the more at risk. And, the more regulatory requirements, the more at risk. And these are big projects, right? When you start getting to that level. So there's a lot of people in the middle, but the big projects are very interesting because it takes a lot of time.
I do appreciate that you're describing that gradual arc for Azure now, because that's always been Microsoft's claim to fame, right? You didn't need to know a huge amount before anything would work. You need to know a little bit and something would work, and a little bit more and something would. I mean, that's always been what Microsoft's been good at. To get there, because it is easy dropping into the Azure portal and just be overwhelmed. Like, there's a lot of stuff there.
Right.
Well,
but it's also easy to drop into the portal and be productive, right? Like, you can spin things up and try it before you've automated. And I think that's highly valuable. Ultimately, you're going to automate everything. And you're going to make sure that you have your Terraform scripts and configuration of state and pipelines for build and release and testing and all of that stuff, right? But not everybody needs all of that, right? Like, some customers, their disaster recovery story is probably not as good as others, but they're sort of just counting on Azure being in good shape, and they have multi-region, and there is a lot of automatic backup and recovery available. You can back up your VMs and back up your paths, and this is good. And then there's the others that are like, yeah, everything's fully automated. I can change a script and I can see exactly what changed. It rolls out automatically at CI/CD, that kind of thing.
So, you've compared and contrasted Amazon and Azure here, and told a really nice story about a little bit of both services. I've got to ask the elephant in the room question, right? We heard the big news over the last weekend, and those of you that are watching the recording, it happened here in October, that the U.S. government decided to choose Azure over Amazon. Do you understand why? Does it make sense for their types of needs, why they would choose one over the other? Or does it feel like it's just, this one had more money?
I think a lot of these are handshake decisions that happen with a lot of, probably some political fire under there, probably a lot of, discussion of pricing and what kind of deal you can make. There's certainly relationships involved, though, right? I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of good in both clouds, right?
Yeah. Richard, can you restart your camera? It looks like it froze while you were blinking there for us.
And you look tired.
Oh, you know what? It actually just disconnected him.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. Something happened to his...
Something that I said?
No. No. Let me try and get him back on the call here. Yeah, literally, he was blinking and talking to us. He didn't fall asleep. It just... the network dropped there to him. Let me see if I can get him back in here. Yeah, there's definitely got to be some handshake deals, that kind of a sales discussion thing, something like that happening. But I'm hearing a little bit of how Azure helps you get those more secured, better topology, where you really have to know that stuff going in Amazon. Feels like that pit of success.
There's a lot of really, like Security Center is coming along wonderfully, and I think that there's a lot of sort of, I don't want to say for free because you have to know how everything works to get this stuff set up, but let's just say that there's a lot of great connectivity between the services in Azure and the log analytics story and Security Center story and dashboarding story that is needed. Now, as with everything, there's a lot of investment to get, let's say, again, look at that range. Somebody out of the gate, small business, getting something in Azure, small to medium business, even reasonable sized business with, a couple of clusters, some data backend, maybe have the WAF, et cetera, connecting that to Security Center, getting a lot of visibility and alerts and suggestions on how to improve your posture. That's all working like really nicely without a lot of effort. And then when you get into these interesting, sort of situations where, you need to VNet everything needs to be on the VPN. There's connectivity to on-premise things. You need to, prevent access to all of the endpoints, even that Azure exposes. So now everything needs to be firewalled. Now you're adding work, right? But the features are there. And they're also adding more and more features for those stories, which is what the big kind of deployments need, right?
Oh, for sure.
So again, that spectrum is very, very wide. And when you get started, you're getting a lot, again, dare I say, for free. And then you're sort of adding the complexity as you need it and as you're ready. And I feel like that's a good story.
Oh my gosh, yes. So
yeah.
I'm trying to
Did we lose Richard?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he lost network connection there because he is not responding.
Can he text you on Skype? I'll try to hit him on Skype.
Yeah, let's see if we can get it here. Oh, now he just scooted over. See, I'm trying to move the camera here so that it fit in the box properly up top there.
Oh, for me?
Yeah. It's okay. There we go.
Oh.
I'm just trying to get that positioned properly. So, right, I end up sitting back and sitting outside the outside my frame here. So, it works out okay. In the chat room, Wolfhound Jesse says, I feel like Microsoft has a pretty long-standing relationship with the DoD, and it seems like a natural fit. Yeah, I can buy that. There's definitely a long-standing relationship between Microsoft and the government, where Amazon really is new to a lot of the enterprise discussions and government discussions. Yeah, right. I also don't see Richard in...
That could be true. I would have to be honest and say I don't know a lot about that, that part of where Microsoft or Amazon fits with the DoD, right?
Yeah.
But that does make a lot of sense. And that would be then a reason why. I'm not going to move. I'll keep my skeletons behind me.
Keep them there in the closet behind you, doing the thing.
Skeletons are out of the closet, right there.
They're going to go back in the closet after tonight, though, and everything will be just fine.
Yeah. Actually, I work so much. That's my family, and I just didn't feed them.
Oh, they've aged so well.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh, it's hysterical.
So
you have the workshop happening.
I do. We haven't even talked about that. My goodness.
We've been talking around it, all the topics around it, around getting folks up to speed and being productive with their architecture. I'm trying to dig up
people on Twitch be like, when are you going to talk containers, girlfriend? No. No, but the workshop is really a lot of things because there's 2 days. So, and I update it all the time, and I'm not going to lie, like now there's a whole team behind a lot of what we do there because we have all these labs that we started a long time ago and then sort of eventually moved into Microsoft now uses one of the key labs on the containers. So we maintain that with Microsoft on the MCW list. So that's a nice resource we could share. And there's a lot of work that goes into all of our customers in the whole microservices space. So, going back like a couple of years even, we started building the microservices practice at Alliance. And as people rolled in and were new to containers and stuff, the first place that I put them is working with me on the workshop materials that have been evolving over 5 years, right? And it's been really great because, people just sort of start picking up. I think Richard's silent again. Look at him.
He's back.
We got him. You are. Oh, hey. You're just intently listening. Wow. Okay, that's deep. So there's a lot of content as a result, right? Because it's been sort of like moving over time. And whenever there's something that I can see coming down the road we might need to use with a customer, immediately I'm like, okay, let's get people researching this and that, like, because you need like a whole team. There's like loads of people now that we work with on some of these really large projects, right? So, and there's a lot of projects in parallel sometimes. So there's, the teams had to grow, and so that's been, so it's good stuff. So I talk about design, some of the decisions we go through when we're trying to figure out how do you think about a microservices solution, the domain allocations, and how you choose what your domains are, how you break that into microservices, and how the deployment sort of matrix looks like once you have sort of a domain plan, if you will. And that includes the domain modeling, it includes data. And then you go into just Docker, right? How do I understand containers? What's the sort of Docker 101 things that I might want to do? And let's align that to ASP.NET Core, because ASP.NET Core, there's certain things we want to do in every host. When we set up, how do we do health checks today? There's new ways to do that now. How do we do logging, right? With Siri Log, we usually like to use. So talk a little bit about that. Talk about how that integrates with App Insights later. And then we talk about sort of, I guess, the whole sort of picture of containers in Azure, right? So I can, as a developer locally, I'm going to use Docker Compose or Kubernetes. So we'll compare those things. But then once I'm ready to go to Azure, I got to get my CI/CD pipeline going. I got to build images, push them to ACR. We don't really get into like setting up container scanning in ACR, but I speak about it just because we do that a lot for customers, like sort of how this fits into a real world. And that's kind of where I like to spend the time is, these are things we all have to do. Here's some choices we've seen with real customers. And then once you've got your build pipeline going, now we got to get into where am I going to deploy this stuff, different topologies. So I focus on AKS, but I do a quick compare of things like app services with containers, and some customers have found that really useful for certain things, lift and shift migrations. And then we go into, ACI and AKS, and then now we get into topologies and load balancing and health and self-healing and recovery. And then I drill into event-based architectures as well, because it's one of the things that is really pretty prevalent in almost every microservices architecture that we've worked on. So.
Now, I feel like app service with a container registry and hook that up to Azure DevOps is like a zero friction way to step through, get something quickly into a container, into a smaller app service that's running Linux. You're deploying a container. It'll detect when the registry has been updated and automatically deploy. It feels like that's a zero friction way to get a small application running.
Right, and I think that having latest always go to production is dangerous, right? But not if you're in a small enough environment where that's your low friction. You just need this always up to date, right? I think that's a decision that you're making as a business, because latest in production can also cause a lot of problems. So usually we like to have, a pipeline do the release. But again, now we're getting into more formal strategies. So, the small business that possibly runs big things, but you only have a couple people, you want to be more hands-on maybe with your whole process, because you haven't had time to set up everything to the point where, release and then, ways to roll forward quickly and ways to detect when something's wrong and keeping an eye on that. Maybe you don't have all your unit tests over 85%. Maybe you don't have, end-to-end tests that are baked into the release pipeline. Like, these are all formalities that help you get to full CI/CD to prod, which would still arguably be select a version and deploy.
Okay. Or
select a tag. Like, the tag you're deploying is the actual, image build, not latest. Latest is a dangerous tag. That's a good dev tag for CI/CD to dev.
So one of the ways that I kind of work around that is I have my master branch in GitHub is production, and only when I push into the master branch does it build the container and deploy into the registry.
Right. So we do, PR to dev, does CI/CD to dev.
Yeah.
And then PR to master would CI/CD to test. And then that one you never have to change, because that actual image is now immutable, and the thing you're testing and promoting to stage and promoting to prod with release pipelines, but the image doesn't change. But even that doesn't work when you're in an environment that has potentially 12, 14 domains, and then multiple environments that have different development teams. And now I need many dev environments or clusters, and I need, maybe we need to figure out, like, one of the interesting things that we've gone through in a few different ways, but even recently is discussing how do you decide if I'm on team A and I need to consume services on team D, which version should I hit?
Yes.
And come up with patterns that will be predictable for your team. So now we're in if I always develop against what's in stage, which is supposed to be equivalent to prod, right? It's the thing that's ready to roll, then that's my pattern, which means now I need something in between master, which ships it to stage, and release, which is what I'm testing right now. Because I need to test my stuff against what's blessed, not against what you are not sure is ready to go.
Right. Well,
so there's it gets really interesting when the teams are bigger and you've got 50, 70 people working on a project.
Oh, the workflow has got to be crazy. Right.
Yeah.
Setting up and staging that entire.
That's why you need patterns and you need to come up with those. And, I didn't invent that pattern, right? I work with really smart people that have been through different things. We negotiate that pattern, based on the situation, and a different pattern might work better somewhere else. So it's about coming up with the right way that works for you, that's predictable. The key thing is the predictability of it, so that you're not dealing with, wait, what should I do? You should always be doing the same thing.
And that makes continuous deployment so much easier.
Yeah.
I could throw a sort of operational view on this as well, where I've worked with ops guys where we're part of the A/B tests. We've got a new version, but we're only going to pilot on a couple of instances with a certain amount of load to see how it behaves. So the vast majority, this is an e-commerce site, so the vast majority of traffic is running over the previous version, but we're starting to test the new version with just some load to see how it behaves. Yeah. Do you get into that?
You know what? Somebody was looking for me because they thought I was going to be done before. I didn't hear you.
Right.
I'm so sorry. I had to tell them I'm still here.
Yeah. Well,
that's my day, by the way. People looking for me all day. That's my day constantly. That's cool. This is like a treat, okay?
Focused on one thing for an hour.
What I should have said is, aren't you watching me on Twitch? Don't you know I'm still here? But no, I didn't do that. Because I don't roll that way.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay, sorry. Repeat what you said.
Michelle's off playing Fortnite on Twitch. That's what she's doing. Okay.
Yeah, I was really playing a game. Sorry, I'm addicted.
Yeah, but you won. That's the important part.
Yeah.
I would think, especially with container architectures where you have multiple instances of everything, all this stuff is way easier in the cloud. Where I've been working with ops guys where we're actually testing new versions in production, but only a fraction of the overall load. So the vast majority of users are still running on the previous version of the site, but we're scraping off 2% or 4% of traffic and running it through
Oh no.
There goes. And watching the logs on them.
Running it through, and then you cut out.
Oh, well, I'm watching my internet really have a heart attack. I have multiple connections, and they all took a hit, and they're very grumpy right now. It's very interesting to see what's going on there. But the idea that you take a percentage of the load and run it through the new version, and then watch the logs, watch your instrumentation on it.
Yeah.
So this new version being well in production.
Right. No, that's absolutely, and you can do that at the network level, right? So the routing side, and that's a good way to do it. It's kind of like a form of A/B testing, but really it's more like canary deployments, right? Yeah.
Well, and back in the Strange Loop days, we had customers that were willing to be part of a beta team, that they would get the new features first in exchange for heavy duty levels of instrumentation and some risk. Right. So, we were pushing out bits to them and then watching it behave and then, and tweaking from there. So the idea that you would be able to identify traffic from different sources and be able to test with the folks you wanted to test with. But there's just no substitute for production. I've never been able to build a load test as sophisticated as what customers do to websites.
Yeah. Well, so this is where it gets interesting. So the philosophy around testing microservices has to be completely different than how you thought about testing in the past, right? So, you shore up your unit, your functional, your integration tests, fine. And those all go in pipeline. and they don't touch real assets and they don't touch cloud things. They just focus on, your mocks and or container things you can hit in the pipeline. And then you have your end-to-end test, maybe for key sort of stories that you have to make sure, almost like a smoke, right? Like, what are the things that we got to make sure are still solid, right? But once you think about, like, you can't think of every possible scenario when you've got, 14 teams and 80, 100, thousands of microservices, who knows, right? So at some point, you have to just be able to ship stuff and recover when something's wrong. So that's why the emphasis is on making things resilient, like container services down, retry, let's not, throw up just right away, because let the system heal itself. That's why, the emphasis on being able to quickly get things through the pipeline, that commit to master that gets it through all the way to prod quickly, is another thing, right? Pot fixing, whatever, rolling forward. And this is hard stuff to get your head around, because, depending who you're talking to, the answer could be, what do you mean I shouldn't test everything?
Right.
Like, are you an idiot?
Well,
and no, like, it's not that you're an idiot, it's that you cannot create the same load, and also you cannot create even the same scenarios. So every development team or domain team has to own their stuff. And if you ship something that depends on another and something's not working as expected, you're responsible for seeing it's not expected. You're responsible for fixing what's unexpected or explaining to me who's wrong, whatever. And it's like you're constantly engaged. Like, it's not ship it and, like, call me if you need me. You're constantly engaged, right?
Well, and you can, when we were doing this with the e-commerce site, when we saw that there were problems in the new version, we just throttled those instances down. They just got no load while we made the fixes. So there was never a rollback, because the back was still there. This is what was exciting about these container architectures. It just gets easier to be able to maintain the known good site in production while you are testing the new site against production traffic.
Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
the operational discussion around this, maybe we're just not having it enough, because I think the operational discussion is super interesting too. I tell you, ops guys that get involved in the field tests, like they're part of that process, they're great folks. Like, you have it's a different level of connection between the teams when you can get into that.
Very cool. Well, this is a 2-day workshop you've got. 2 days. Holy crow. That is not for the faint of heart. Get ready to get your architecture on here in that workshop. And then you've got 2 other sessions at the event on microservices and message-based queuing, it looks like. Really great stuff.
Message-based microservices, yeah. And then I've got my surviving microservices.
That is awesome
Which,
stuff. I need to
sometimes
get
I deliver that as a keynote, but I've been known to do it at a conference, not as a keynote, and I change it every time a little bit. So.
Well, and we kind of did a version of that on .NET Rocks that hasn't published yet too.
Yeah, we had a good talk. Love it. And we thought we were going to talk about it before Vegas, but then we realized, wait, it's publishing after Vegas, so we had to regroup. Saw you in Vegas.
Yeah.
We had fun.
Yeah.
That was good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, so it'll be good. So conference is in a couple weeks, so it should be exciting. Looking forward to it.
Very much looking forward to it. Oh,
Vegas, baby.
Yeah. Great event. Always fun at the MGM.
Yep.
So, well, thank you so much, Michele. This was great. I really appreciate you joining us.
Good chat.
Yeah.
Thanks
Sorry
for
I
having me.
for a while. The internet was angry with me.
That's all right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go do stuff and things.
Stuff and things.
The people are already hunting.
Yeah. People are hunting me. I got to go. But good to talk to you.
All righty. Take care.
See you guys.
We'll see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Well, I'm glad I made it back. That was a scary couple of minutes, and I'm running around with this hat on trying to wrestle my network connection.
Yeah, we're looking at him thinking, did your camera freeze? Just reset your camera, and poof! All of a sudden disconnected.
Yeah, it was a full barf, and it looked like the the primary internet connection. So I have multiple internet connections coming into the house because have you met me? The primary internet connection looks like that's what barfed.
Oh my gosh.
So and it was one of those things where I just sort of look like, what's going on? And then I'm looking at the multi-WAN router is sulking about a failover. So I'm like, why are you fighting? So I had to reset the router. And then it came up, and then it's, the slowest connection, which is I think a 50 megabit connection, lit first.
Okay.
And so then it was, I want to route to this. I'm like, hang on, let's see if the 150 comes up. And then the 150 came up. So then that was the one where I was actually able to make the call on. And then the primary came back, the 250 came back up, and then, so
now,
I think we're okay, but it's the interesting reality is the internet and most software is simply not built for the idea that there's multiple routable connections coming into the gateway. So stuff hops. Sometimes it triggers security things. Like I've seen software get really angry with me because the same cookie on the same token, like it looks like a man in the middle attack because we suddenly hop connections. So
I want to hold that thought. Certainly, Dev asks, "What? No dirty joke? We didn't get a Michele dirty joke. Is that?"
She dropped a couple of great ones on the .NET Rocks episode too.
So we'll save it. We'll save that for .NET Rocks.
Yeah, you'll hear it. They were killer, and they weren't dirty, except in your own mind.
Oh,
it's one of those, those kinds of jokes where it's really what you were thinking that made it naughty. Yeah, she did a couple of those. So you could tell she has a kid around these days.
So back to multiple connections. It's not like I'm running a miniature TV studio here from the house now.
Yeah,
and that's something. That's something I've been pondering. Is I'm on Verizon here. Do I give a call over to Comcast and say, hey, pull a second line, and do a multiple WAN router here?
Sure. And then also you can stick different machines to different connections too, right? Like
exactly.
And I've got, because I still have the server closet here, which is getting stupider and stupider over time. Like at some point I'm just a hypocrite, right? So I have connections with fixed IPs, like real proper inbound connectivity, and around that, which is why you end up with so many different connections for different reasons. But yeah, the services that are running in the closet, over to my left here, are set up in the sort of cloudish way where it's multiple VM hosts, all VMs are portable. Like we have all that capability. Like I've learned to operate that way for years, but there's just no excuse for running an Exchange server anymore. Like I just have to stop it.
Say thank you. That's enough. Take the pain away.
Really enough. And the older daughter's webcomic, we've moved up to the cloud just because she has such extreme burst loads.
Okay,
it makes sense to not just to get them up there when certain pages come out. That just the traffic is insane. So.
Oh my gosh.
It's it's interesting to think about what the home architecture should look like now. Like I have all these old skills from the original .com boom that just pre-cloud are just not relevant. I could just need to. It's interesting. Sometimes I wish I could almost burn the closet down and start from scratch.
Okay.
Like I have an Active Directory infrastructure for this house that predates Active Directory. The first version of it was on Server 2000 with PDC BDC configuration, and I migrated it to AD, and that just means baggage.
Lots of baggage.
There's
my goodness,
stuff creeping around in my AD that just give me chills, and I should just reset the whole dang thing.
It's time to reset.
Yeah, I'll do it in my spare time. That's what I'll do. Yeah,
spare time. What's that?
Right now, what spare time is right now? Procrastinating on the book. So when I literally look at it like I'll migrate that stuff into the cloud when I can't stand working on the book anymore.
I've run
finished, man.
Yeah, right. I've run into I would much rather be broadcasting than anything else. Turning on the camera and talking to folks out there on Twitch, writing code with them, it lights me up.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's so much fun.
The book has been leaning on, eating away at my brain for a year and a half now. So I've got to get it out. Once it's out, like I'm now stacking stuff up that's like rewards for me getting the book finished.
Yes.
I'm not gonna start a new thing. Like the Geek Outs should be living on their own, and arguably could be a Twitch stream. at least the research parts. I'm not going to touch that until I get this book out of my head. It's got to be done. You got to end it. Enough.
Ship it already.
It's making me crazy.
Similarly, I have a handful of videos that I need to finish producing, and when I'm done producing them, there's a fine bottle of Macallan in my future. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like
I see Surly Dev. Yeah, stream that. So the number of people for the Geek Outs over the years that have asked me, could we see your research process? Which I think is insane on the surface of it. It's like, look, I read papers and I make notes, but I guess it's streamable.
For sure.
Just pull up the paper. You can watch me read. I read very fast. I highlight things. I take notes into them. I, go down rabbit holes. It's like, what does this really mean? And you dig into that and explore it for a while, and then see if you can pop your way back up onto the stack again. Like that's reality of all of those things.
But the challenge, I think, in a format like this would be, when do you pause for interaction with chat?
Yeah, and do I want to get distracted? Is there something hovering behind me?
There is, but you've got I
have the Skype
filter
thing on now, so that's very funny.
She doesn't
it's
know.
Just a floating head. Let's see. I'll unblur. Let's see if we can make sense of it. There it comes. What was that? Did you see something?
There might be something back there. Hang on. I actually have a...
You can tell the children are away. She has way too much time on her hands now.
There's something back there. I don't know what it is. Stacy's having too much fun here. Oh my goodness.
New
I
outfit.
can't figure out this camera.
All right.
Everything's reversed. Oh my goodness.
All right. I'm turning the blur back on. I think I like the blur.
Whopper Dev says every couple months you're going to have another chapter for new stuff that's for that .NET book.
Once I catch up to 20 years, then it's more historian sort of maintenance. But yeah, I don't know what to do about that per se. For a long time I was thinking, well, I'll get this done in time for to make an epilogue saying, here comes .NET Core 3. Missed that one. Now I'm sure we're going to get done ahead of .NET 5.
Oh my gosh. .NET 5 I worry that we're not going to see the Osborne effect with this, right?
No,
.NET 5 has so much promise.
Well, in that sense, it's almost, and being kind to your boss and my friend, it's a little fictional right now. It's promising all the things. It's going to be interesting to see what can actually get done in a reasonable length of time.
Right.
But the basic goal, the unification of .NET, I think it's an incredibly worthy goal. So you talk about a great epilogue. Mm-hmm. That would be a great epilogue.
Right. I mean, just the concept and getting there, right? We've seen folks that are monitoring GitHub, and there are folks monitoring GitHub.
Yes.
Are seeing it starting to happen. They're seeing the branches are out there. Mm-hmm. And, right, we should see before build, we should start to see some previews happen.
Yeah.
And that'll really that'll foretell what's happening in MVP Summit in March. We should start to see some more details happening
before builds. We have MVP Summit. We'll probably get our first chance to take a peek of it. For me as an outsider, I mean, you work for the company. I don't know what you know, and you're not allowed to tell me, which is good. But yeah, so if we might get some taste at the MVP Summit. We'll certainly see something at builds. Who knows exactly what? And then maybe this time next year, we're going to be talking about how wonderful everything is. But just because you ship .NET 5 doesn't mean we're all going to get to run it either.
Correct.
I mean, we've already had the casualties, right? The WCFs of the world, the WFs of the world. Like there's code, and the web forms of this world. Like there's code out there that you've got under the .NET moniker right now that is not going to be part of .NET 5.
Yeah.
That's sort of reality. There'll be paths forward without a doubt. Like I look at all the things that are happening around gRPC and so forth, and trying to build paths forward for WCF. But as soon as you poke at things, as soon as you're not just migrating code, you're rethinking code, the rethink gets really large.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Immediately you're probably odds are if you're dealing with a code base of that age and style, it's pre-cloud, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's like, what should we be cloudifying here?
Mm-hmm. Cloudifying is an interesting verb. Can we coin that? Can somebody get that as a domain name?
I am aware, and I have helped. What I'm doing at Ignite is helping to bring other podcasts to Ignite to do. And one of the shows I got scheduled was specifically around the cloud adoption framework.
Okay, there you go.
And for me, as someone who's been a Microsoft watcher and a technology watcher for many, many years, it's like, this is what maturity looks like. When the product stack gets mature enough now that you can start building systems for migrating to it, as opposed to cool new thing, find your way on it. Yeah. And it's finally like, okay, well, a bunch of this stuff works, and with this set at this version, here are strategies for these classes of applications that can move on to it. So I'm not knowing much more about the cloud adoption framework than they're talking about it. I'm just betting that's what it is. The best VB6 to .NET migration tool I ever saw, I saw in like 2006.
Right? Years, 5-6 years after.
Yeah, way after, right?
Yeah,
but the point was, just because VB hadn't been worked on since '99 didn't mean there wasn't a non-trivial number of people running around with serious VB code bases.
Certainly.
And it took years and years to mature those tools all the way up. This time next year, supposedly we'll have .NET 5. It will not be the best day to migrate to .NET 5. It'll be the beginning days.
Yes. Beginning it might even be too strong a word, right? I mean, okay, you'll be able to run .NET 5 side by side with other applications if the migration path is as gentle as it has been from .NET Core 2 to 3. If they're able to if it's possible to, I'm trying to say my words here properly. If it's possible to enable, I don't want to say if you're able to enable, that's stupid. If it's possible to enable that ease of transition by just changing a version number and run it side by side with the other version, the 3 version, we might actually be in a really nice scenario to upgrade our .NET Core applications.
I think the core guys are going to migrate. That's just not going to be a big deal. I mean, 3.1 is going to be the LTS, like the long support one. But long support these days still means 3 years, right? So it's not that long. They're going to move up. I'm not worried about any of the core people. They will come. I'm worried about the 4X people, right? The folks that have, and I hear from them all the time through the show, the folks that feel like they've been left behind.
So a friend of mine, and you've seen her here on Twitch out there, chat room, I know you have, our friend Fierce Kittens, she works for a large game studio, and going through the process of migrating a WPF app from 4X to Core and .NET Core 3, it was rough. She was in on some of those previews. It was a really rough process.
Well, and those are really V1 bits,
yes,
right? They are.
Yes, but now that we're in and we've got that 3.0 RTM and we're looking at the 3.1 coming, things are really smooth. It runs really nice now.
Well, and the 3.1 LTS, I think, is going to be the first real version for client dev folks. Yeah. And certainly it's shows we're making right now. It's a story arc that I care about. It's like, what's the real state of client dev? Is it only legacy? Or is there new client dev that makes sense? And what does that look like, right? And I love Billy, right? Like, Billy has always been this is a man who believed in WPF before Microsoft believed in WPF.
You're referring to Billy Hollis. We've had him as a guest here on the...
But I always have to remind myself that Billy's how you set a high water mark, not how you set a median. Like, he's the guy at the edge who's done more than anyone else. I mean, heck, Microsoft calls them to understand their own products.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love putting him on the show, but I know when I put him on the show, I'm putting him on to show the high water mark. Like, this is what is possible. If you can live underneath this, just know someone has come before you.
Yeah.
But when you actually talk about what, I'm trying to support the average developer just trying to get their job done, right? And they don't do new and shiny because it's fun, right? Their goal is to deliver software. And so rarely are the bits that you're shipping, this next show, the bits they care about. It's -1, -2. And more importantly, it's like, I'm here. How do I, why would I go there? Once you convince me I should go there, how do I go there knowing I get minimal time for technical debt payments. Like
right.
just
Make me productive.
I show it in a sprint.
Yeah. I need a quick turnaround on that, and that's why, right? The Net 4.6, 4.7 folks getting to core, like you're saying, not trivial.
Yes,
and those migration patterns are needed.
Message we said over and over again on .NET Rocks is, don't worry about core. Get to 4.8.
Yes.
Get to the latest version of the standard framework and be comfortable and confident there. And because that, if there's gonna be a springboard for you forward, it'll be there.
Yeah. And not just get there, but factor your code appropriately. Move your business logic into class libraries that you can easily migrate. And let user interface where there is breakage change and be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you start to play side-by-side games. Like there's all kinds of choice now once you start getting to those bits. I'm very, and this is the same thing. The way that I think about audience at .NET Rocks is the same way I think about audience at DEVintersection. It's like it's fun to be leading edge, but it's also not practical most of the time. Only in certain circumstances. I think a lot about how we build content trees around folks that are running that every time I do a web form session at the show, it's packed. Every time I do a web form session at the show, it's packed. And there's a reason. There's lots of code out there, and they are. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me that this still makes sense to take care of and to do something more with. Right? I still have not found a brownfield to container story that I can advocate for.
Ah, you wound me.
Well, because let's face it, containers on Windows, Docker on Windows, it's not there still.
It's not.
And so
as much as
it's not really brownfield.
No, as much as I tried to advocate for it and push for that to be a better experience, until the Windows team makes containers on Windows a priority and makes that a thing, we can build all the tooling into the frameworks that we want and for our developer tools. It's just not supported.
Windows has to be all the way there, and Windows has some troubles. Yeah. The reorganization of the teams, the things that have gone on there, like I understand that they're distracted. And so, you're looking at it from a different way. But more relevantly, it's like we've had two really great container people on today and had good conversations about them. But it's a Linux story.
It is.
So for now. And as long as that's true, it's not likely we're going to appeal to a brownfield app. It's just like, it makes no sense. It's not going to buy anything.
No.
The amount of work, right? So, when I talk about a great brownfield story, it's like, here's how I protected a 10-plus-year-old code base in the modern world. When we got physical to virtual working, right, the P to V thing working, it was a boon for legacy code, right?
Yeah.
That I had this machine that everybody feared, and we didn't know how we were going to build a new one, and it suddenly made that irrelevant.
Oh my gosh, yes.
A VM, so that all that, that for real people maintaining real software, that was transformational. Right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Have I seen the equivalent for containers? No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Nexus C in the chat room says, this isn't really selling that workshop I signed up for migrating my .NET app to core. So I think you're referring to the workshop that we planned for migrating your WPF or your Windows Forms app to core.
Right.
That's actually, so like I said, there were some issues in the preview bits, and they got them ironed out for the 3.0 release.
Yeah. Like you said, now it's smooth.
Not only is it smooth, but at that workshop, we've actually got some engineers that are going to be there in the room with you from the .NET team, that not only will they give you presentations and talk through and show you how to migrate, but as you're migrating your app, they'll be there to figure out those hard problems and get you there. So,
right. Well, and this is another thing. Whenever we get a chance to do this style of workshop too, it's like, and by the way, did you want to influence the future of how all this stuff works? Because they're in the room.
Yeah.
They know why they're there. They want your app. They want to see your app. They want to meet you. They want that experience. Like, people ask me, why do you have these Microsoft engineers coming to this thing? Like, what did you do? It says, I got them a chance to meet you.
Yeah.
That's
this is a two-way street. Yeah,
Well, it's hugely important, right? That's how the products actually get better, is when they get to meet developers that are maintaining real software for real people, and talk about how they're going to move forward, what they want to be able to do with it. Like, that's why they're there.
Yep. Whopper Dev says they're on ASP.NET 4.8 with web forms, and they're thinking of using .vvm to help transition to core. So .vvm, that's a .NET Foundation project that is a user interface facade that you can use both in .NET Framework and in .NET Core, but it's compatible across the two frameworks. It's a great choice.
Nice.
Either way, you're rewriting your application. You're rewriting on .NET Framework before you swap out the framework. It's another nice choice.
Yeah, no, that certainly offers possibilities. And yeah, I hope I haven't unsold any workshops here, just because there's plenty of reasons to move if you're studying it, and spending a day with the experts to really understand what it takes. Whether you move or not, at least you're working from a position of knowledge.
Right, and to be clear, we were saying that the Windows container story isn't there.
Yes. Containers are epic, but they require Linux right now, really.
Yeah. Desktop applications, there's a good story.
Yeah. And that's the core 3 thing. And the new version of Win, why do you want the new version of WinForms? High DPI screens. Hello. Right? Like, that's the win.
Side-by-side installs. No longer do you have to wait, and everybody's got to get .NET Framework 4.foo installed. No. Put down the framework with you. It's in the folder. You don't need to rely on a shared framework. Those are the two big wins for those.
Yeah.
So performance is gigantic, right? But performance can be solved with RAM.
Yeah, with more hardware, right?
Yeah.
The correct answer. Well, are you sufficiently Halloweened, my friend?
I've got just a few hours, and we're going to be taking the kids out for some Halloween here.
Yeah, East Coast thing, and you still got kids to take out. Mine are away. Yeah. We are going to be. You've seen her. We're the ones handing out the candy this year.
Nice.
So, there's nobody else around. And the poor dog is going to lose his mind, but that's normal for Halloween.
My wife, for a few years, thought it was right to just leave a bowl on the front porch with the candy on it. I'm like, are you? Do you know how this works?
There's a contract. There's a contract. You have to tell me about your costume.
Not just that, but when you leave the whole bowl of candy out there, the first kid comes up and says, "For me?"
Zai, right? And I am strictly a chocolate bar household. Like, come on.
Right. We are fully half the bowl is Reese's peanut butter cups.
Interesting. What about the allergies?
That's what the other half of the bowl is. It's all the other things.
Oh, the other thing. The I can't be near peanut butter collection, but yeah,
exactly. It's right there. There's the second.
Don't hand out any candy corn around here. We don't do those things. It's wrong.
Get that candy corn out of here, peeps.
Get the real chocolate. Yeah,
we want chocolate, peanut butter.
Because what we're here.
Absolutely. My gosh. So we've got just a few days until Ignite, and that's a crazy size event in Orlando.
Yes.
But the big one that I'm looking forward to is DEVintersection, more live content, more streaming from there. I am so looking forward to this show in November. It's going to be tremendous.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think we've put together a great group of folks. It's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah. Hope everyone's there, and you will see pieces of it on the stream right here.
Yeah, make sure you click the follow button up top above us so that you can be notified when we go live. Follow the DEVintersection Twitter account so you can see about that. Follow us on Twitter as well, and you'll see us talking about all the cool stuff that's happening. We're really excited and looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Richard. This has been great.
Thanks, man. Good fun. Lots of excitement.
All right, friends, and we'll see you next time live from Las Vegas for DEVintersection. Take care.